Hello. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. Hello, YouTube. Hello to everyone in the chat and everyone watching on the VOD. This is your esteemed host, Shintigercurl. And welcome to a holiday edition of Shintigercurl Streamin. Sorry about that. For some reason, my audio wasn't being picked up by, my microphone wasn't being picked up by Streamlabs. So I had to do some last minute adjustments. So I hope that this all turns out. I hope it's not a sign of things to come. I see a couple of folks in here. Say hello in the chat if you're in here. Make your presence known. And tonight, you already know, it's the eve before Christmas Eve, and I figured now would be a good time to do some streaming. I already held a vote on my community tab to see who wanted to see what, and the vote was unanimously, almost unanimously, for some more Warmachine lore. So that's exactly what we're going to get, and it's not exactly in the festive holiday spirit, considering the topic tonight, but it's what you guys wanted. But before we do that, you already know, it's time to get out your guns. Lock and load, because it's time to shoot the shit. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, hey, Devil, how you? I know the work's being a bit rough on you, but that's okay. Glad to have you. We just glad to have you in here. So, just glad to see you around. So, what are we going to talk about? Of course, we're going to talk about, John Cena's retirement, which went over like a wet fart in the wind, and I myself am disappointed. Not because John Cena lost. I am not disappointed by that, because a lot of the all-time greats go out on their shield. I'm just sad the way it happened. It just did not go out the way I wanted it to go out, and Cena's entire retirement run this entire year has just been flat and disappointing. They didn't really have a plan for Cena's retirement. They just threw a bunch of shit at the wall and hoped the fans love it, including an epic but ultimately meaningless and pointless heel turn. Sucks. But let's not talk about WWE right now. Let's talk about some AEW. If you didn't know, right now, AEW is this week will be the end of the Continental Classic. This is the final week, the final matches for the Continental Classic. For those of you who don't know what the Continental Classic is, or the C2 as we sickos like to call it, the Continental Classic is now AEW's signature tournament. It is a 12-person tournament it's a 12-person round-robin tournament pitting 12, like I said, of the best wrestlers in AEW, separated into two blocks, the Gold League and the Blue League. It's very, very similar to the New Japan's G1 Climax. The winner will be crowned the new Continental Champion. Now, when I know that for some people that don't understand this because of the situation with Okada currently is the unified champion, meaning that he holds both the AEW Continental Crown Championship and the international title. So he's only unified champion so long as he holds both titles. So only his Continental belt is on the line. Now, as a round-robin tournament, this means that everyone in both leagues will face each other once. You get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and no points if you lose. And if you're worried about outside interference, there is none. There is to be no outside interference whatsoever. No seconds, no valets, no managers. It's just the wrestlers out there doing what they do best. Anyone who is shown to interfere in any match of the Continental Classic will be kicked out of AEW for good. Unfortunately, Don Callis has found a way around that because he does comms for whenever one of his members of the Don Callis family wrestles. But don't worry, he doesn't interfere. Now, this year, this has arguably been the closest C2 that we have ever had. Now, let's go over in case you didn't know, let's go over the Gold League and the Blue League. In the Gold League, we have the current reigning and defending Continental Champion, or in Unified Champion, the Rainmaker Kazuchika Okada, Speedball Mike Bailey, the Protostar Kyle Fletcher, the Jet Kevin Knight, the Bastard Pack and Jungle Jack Perry. Now, it should be noted that Jack Perry is actually an alternate in this tournament because it's the person he's subbing in for, Darby Allin, was unfortunately out with an injury. He wrestled one match in the tournament against Kevin Knight. He lost, and the doctor said that he was not cleared, so they decided that Jack Perry would serve as his alternate. In the Blue League, we got Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Konosuke Takeshita, Roddy Strong, Mascara Dorada, and Orange Cassidy. Very star-studded event. It's okay, man. Just take your time. I'll still be here talking about wrestling and stuff. Now for the points. Then, like I said, this is a very close and extremely competitive Continental Classic. For the Gold League, we have I'm not shitting you, a 5-way tie for first place, consisting of Kazuchika Okada, both members of Jet Speed, that being Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey, the Protostar Kyle Fletcher, and the Bastard Pack, all tied up with 6 points apiece. Jack Perry is holding a second place with 3 points, but he has 3 more matches to participate in, so that means he's still mathematically in this tournament. So, I mean, yeah, he has a rough start because he's an alternate, but he's there. In the Blue League, it's a bit more cut and dry, as the 2 men for first place happen to be Claudio Castagnoli and Konosuke Takeshita, both with 7 points. They were still tied in the previous match, but in the previous match, it ended in a Broadway, going for the full 20 minutes, so they both got a point apiece, meaning that they're at 7 points. Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy are both tied for second with 6 points apiece. Mascara Dorada is holding up in the third place position with 3 points, and rounding out the very last place with a full-on goose egg is Roddy Strong with 0 points, meaning that Roderick Strong is now the first person in the entire tournament to be mathematically eliminated, meaning that even if he wins all 3 of his next matches, he will not be able to win or make it to the final 2 of the tournament. So yeah, it's a lot to deal with. It is a lot to deal with there. And tomorrow night and on Christmas Day, we have special holiday editions of both Dynamite and Collision. Let's see. For Christmas and for the Dynamite on 34th Street, which is tomorrow, we are rounding out the Blue League. I think that's the Blue League, as Konosuke Takeshita will take on Orange Cassidy. For the Gold League, we have Jungle Boy Jack Perry, or Jungle Jack Perry as he's called, versus the Bastard Pack. Mascara Dorada versus Roderick Strong. And we will also have a face-to-face interview between Chris Statlander and Jamie Hayter. We have MJF in rare action. We will have the Dynamite Diamond Ring final. For the first time since the ring was ever created, there will be a new Dynamite Diamond Ring wearer, as MJF did not participate in last week's Dynamite Diamond Ring Battle Royal. So now it will be a matchup between champions, as the newest and first national champ, the AEW national champion Ricochet, takes on the ROH defending world champion Bandito. The winner receives the Dynamite Diamond Ring. And in a grudge match, Mina Shirakawa will take on the Death Rider's very own Marina Shafir. Good stuff. And in Christmas Collision, which will be on Christmas Day, we're going to finish off the Continental Classic with the last matches for both sides. We will have, for the Blue Leagues, we will have freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy against Jon Moxley. We will have the Protostar Konosuke Takeshita versus Mascara Dorada. We'll have Claudio Castagnoli versus Roddy Strong. And in the Gold League, we will have Speedball Mike Bailey versus the Kazuchika Okada, the Rainmaker, of course. Jungle Jack Perry taking on Kyle Fletcher, and the Bastard Pack versus Kevin Knight. For the women, we will have the inaugural AEW Tag Team Champions, Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, the Babes of Wrath, versus the team of Haya and Maya World, who came in because a pair of women thought they were too big to job out and too big for all that kind of stuff. So we're looking forward to that. And it will all culminate this Saturday. It's AEW presents its last pay-per-view of the year, World's End. And for the matches that have been announced, it will be a fatal four-way for the AEW Men's World Title as Samoa Joe defends against Swerve Strickland, Hangman Adam Page, and now a returning Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, having cashed in his guaranteed title shot from the Casino Gauntlet match earlier this year. Now, it should be noted, I just want to say something. It should be noted about this, that MJF he's put himself in a very disadvantageous situation. And what I mean to say is, this is something that a lot of folks are not realizing, is when Max goes into a match, especially when one with the world title on the line, he likes to stack the deck in his favor. And the deck is not stacked in his favor now. He doesn't have any goons to back him up. He doesn't have any special stipulations that he's conned his way into. He doesn't even have the Dynamite Diamond ring. He will not have that this year. It will be going to either it will go either to Ricochet or Bandito. And he's going into the world title match against three of the most dangerous men in AEW at this time. So yeah, that's just woo. I'm not sure what Max is thinking. I think we're going to see something different from him. Hopefully something different. Anyway, for the women's world title, Stat Daddy Chris Statlander will defend against Jamie Hayter. That's going to be a banger. The Babes of Wrath will make their first defense of their tag team titles as they take on the forever champion of ROH, Athena, and Ultimo Monet, Mercedes Moné. Now, it should be noted that Mercedes Moné, as of this, has lost 2 of her world titles. I think she lost, I can't remember which ones she lost. I know she lost the Rev Pro belts to Alex Windsor. So there's that, and we know the crash out is coming. Let's see, who else is not sure about the men's tag. I'm not sure about the other cards. I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm trying to remember what's going to happen at World's End, but there's going to be some great matches at World's End, so we got that to look forward to. All right, let's get to some One Piece news. In a couple of weeks, One Piece will be going on an extended hiatus. And not because of anything wrong with the studio or anything. It was decided earlier this year that One Piece would take the seasonal format for its anime release. As a lot of people don't know, is that One Piece is a relic of an older time in anime. It has been in constant production for the last 20 plus years. That's right, my nephews are younger than One Piece's time as an anime. They didn't do seasons back then. They just put the anime out for folks. So they decided they're going to do a seasonal thing. So after this year, we're not going to get any new One Piece until sometime near the summer. And when One Piece returns, it will officially begin the Elbaf arc. And of course, in the manga, we are currently wrapping up the longest flashback in One Piece history. And it's sort of a flashback in a flashback, as it showcases the history of the king of Elbaf, King Harold, and his connection to a particular pirate by the name of Rox D. Zebek, the captain of the Rox Pirates. And it also showcased more behind the infamous God Valley incident. A lot more went down on that island than a lot of folks know. If you've been reading the manga, you know what happened. So I'm not going to spoil anything for you. But we are about to wrap up the flashback, and we're going to have to find out the truth about King Harold's death as well as Loki's imprisonment. So there's that. Got a lot to look forward to. Let's see. Nothing much else to talk about. in nerd wise, personally, I'm having a decent Christmas. Wish it were colder down here in Texas because it's going to be in the 80s on Christmas. Yeah, it's going to be muggy and hot, and I hate that. It should be cold on Christmas, not warm. We should be getting some colder temperatures by Sunday, so around New Year's we should be having some proper winter weather, but it is what it is. I got my folks something. I was able to save up some money, sold some of my board games to get my parents something. Some nice donations from various people, including my patron. Thank you very much, sir. They're $5. It's appreciated. So I hope you all are having a very, very happy holiday season, even with that orange goblin in the White House. But still. All right, I think you guys are tired of me blabbing on and on about pro wrestling and manga. I know what you're here for. So, Law, if you would kindly do this. Thank you, Law. All right. We are diving back into some more Warmachine lore. That dank, delicious Warmachine. That's right, you're gonna get some Warmachine. Now, I could have done anything, but I decided, what the hell? Let's just keep going with Oblivion. Let's keep going with the claiming. So, if you weren't here, or you should be watching on the VOD, we just went over the events that led up to the claiming, the event where the Infernals began their descent upon Western Immoren to take their due for helping humans get the gift of magic to push out the Orgoth invaders. It showcased, we saw the beginnings of it as former Inquisitor and old piece of shit Orin Midwinter became an infernal servant and opened a dimensional portal in the heart of Castle Routh of the castle of the king of Signar. The early battles were fierce, and we saw some very interesting alliances between the Order of Illumination and a few other peoples whom they would have probably hunted if not for the fact that they were dealing with some eldritch abominations beyond the grips of reality. The first battle is over, but the war for Immoren has just begun. All right. Now, unfortunately, there is no lore book for the claiming, this whole event, but we do have something to read. So when it was just going down, Privateer Press released these things called the HENGE Scrolls, which were released daily, were storylines released daily about the claiming taking place all over Immoren, and seeing all the other factions and all the other characters who you've seen and read about, how they're interacting with each other and how they're dealing with this infernal invasion, how the kingdoms were ultimately betrayed from within by infernal loyalists. It was just a crazy event, and this was released daily on their Twitter and various other social media platforms. Thankfully, they codified all of them into something called the HENGE Scrolls Summation, which basically gives you all the information, all the storylines told in sequential order. Now, this is what I'm going to be reading from. It's rather long. It's not really told in sort of sequential order. It jumps around from perspective to perspective. 1 minute will be in Ios, 1 minute will be in the Protectorate, 1 minute will be in Khador. It's all about seeing these reactions. So you're going to see the run the gamut. And I've read this many, many times, and let me tell you, shit gets real. So, get yourself some eggnog. Get yourself something to eat. Oh, hi, Raziel. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce your name right, but welcome back. I was just about to start with reading the HENGE Scrolls, and we're going to see just what kind of hell befalls the Iron Kingdoms. And it's not a matter of if they can survive, but a matter of how many will survive. So, like I said, get you something to drink, get you something to eat, get some eggnog, get some fruitcake if that's what you like. I fucking hate fruitcake. And let's dig in. They call me mad, but look upon the visions I have seen and try to hold your sanity intact. I alone know the shrouded secrets of the past that have given way to the darkness gripping this world, and I alone have glimpsed the possible futures, few of which include the survival of our world, and none that escape the carnage and misery that will scar it forever. I am the Hermit of HENGE, and in these scrolls I shall chronicle the last days of the Iron Kingdoms as we know it. Ashlyn Delis, now known across Free Lael as the Queen's Blade, retreated to the privacy of her chambers within Merwin's palace, and she wept. Her country had barely begun to pick up the pieces of the grueling war and occupation by Khador before the Infernal struck. The coronation of Lael's new queen, Caitlin de la Mertin, a day in which Ashlyn had prayed for since before Khador's invasion, was forced to be conducted in hiding, while the screams of her countrymen could be heard outside of as their souls were ripped from their bodies. And she had been powerless to act. Only the queen herself could have stayed her sword that day, but it was her wish that Ashlyn be sworn in and officially decreed the highest military authority in the land. Since then, she has found no reprieve from the stench of those hellish nightmares. Their black-soaked boots Their black blood soaked her boots and coated her blade as she led Merwin's armies into ongoing efforts to rebuff the demons seeking their souls. But for every nightmare she vanquished, 2 more would take their place. And for every soul she saved, 10 more would be stolen under her ward. For the moment, she would mourn their loss while struggling not to consider the fate beyond this world. And when the demons came by Morrow's light, they would have their heads, hearts, and entrails liberated from their vile forms by the Queen's Blade. Though it was the souls of humans the Infernals prized, they let nothing deprive them of what they were due. Rulefolk, Ilson, Trollblood, even Scorn, all would pay the price for the Mar's sin unless ancient grievances could be buried. The Oracle Calandra Troopsayer watched black clouds drift towards her home. The Mad Hermit had warned them of the coming locusts, of the devastation they would bring. The warning had troubled her since then. Now, she was afraid. The gathering darkness above blew from pyres of human cities, untold numbers of dead, great plazas, all laid in the path of these creatures, were rendered to ash and ruin. Dunia herself writhed under their touch, wounds deeper than any by the jaws of the worm. She felt the mother's pain in her flesh. A sadness took root in her soul. Fed by faces of grim human refugees and urban Creoles fleeing the locusts' advance. Once her people had been dispatched to seek refuge, under this regime of darkness, it seemed all sought safety. So many seek the United Creole's strength, Calandra said to her daughter, but truly to herself. They were happy to let the king suffer and struggle. They'll reap their own harvest. The other members of her daughter's knot made sounds of agreement, praising her insight. How does the tree grow, daughter? Calandra asked. Can it grow upon bare stones? No, mother. What feeds it? The soil, made richer from plants that have given up their lives, the rain that quenches its thirst. Calandra nodded at her. And when the wind blows? The boughs of its brothers and sisters shielded? Calandra's daughter asked suspiciously. A lone tree must face the storm with its own roots. Calandra knitted her fingers together before her face. But together, their roots embrace to grip the soil, to hold each other fast. The sisters of the knot mused on her words. The forests of men are aflame, daughter, Calandra said. It thins with each day. What do you propose, then? Her daughter asked. Grip the roots tight and hold against the storm, the oracle said. While the peoples of the wild learned to embrace the importance of unity, the nations of humankind made similar efforts, but their way was yet cloaked in veiled threats and displays of power of human arrogance that slowed such labors. It had taken the Supreme Commandant and his retinue nearly 3 weeks to return to Kursk. The dirigible had barely made it over the Thornwood before they were forced to continue on foot. Pursued by Signarin Rangers and Crucible Guard, their survival had been hard won. Irisk recalled staring at the towering black walls of Starovsky Palace, where the Empress awaited his audience, and wished for nothing more that he could have traded places with Commander Strakov aboard the Stormbreaker. Now, many months later, as he approached the smoldering city of Caspia, he wondered if Strakov's soul was any safer than Irisk's own, locked in a Signarin prison, or if the Infernals had devastated their unconquerable city, had claimed it already. While mortals sought unity, the gasping tendrils of infernal corruption spread across the land like a foul wind. No city or village in Emerin escaped their greedy touch. Ashlyn didn't look up when the nobleman Molière entered the meeting chamber. She'd already knew what he had to say, and she preferred never to hear it. They are within our walls, Molière said. How can you be sure? Ashlyn said. The 122 bodies in the wine cellars. Despite Ashlyn's recent military promotions, Molière didn't mince words with her. When he spoke, rank meant nothing between them. These things can't be killed, Molière said. They can't be wounded, they can't be beaten. Free Lyell is already done being free. Ashlyn stiffened. So what would you have us do in the face of this new threat? Molière shrugged. Seek allies, flee the Iron Kingdoms, or die. If we hesitate, those things will choose for us. They will not choose. The Queen chooses. Ashlyn touched her blade. I choose. Tense words shared over seething blades can help build common ground, but only humility can bridge such great gulfs. North and South worked to combine their strength as a spurred youth dreamed of unification. Julius looked north, imagining the flag of Lyell fluttering over every battlement. There are not many kings, he thought, who could claim to lose a queen and a sizable portion of their kingdom in as short a time as he did. Midwinter will pay for his betrayal, said Julius's war master at his side. The young king turned to face him. Do you suppose Caitlin is safe? The war master scowled. What that little bird does now should not concern you. She's as much a traitor as Midwinter. Just smarter than we credit her for, Julius said. Like Midwinter, Caitlin had her own agenda. Julius had built a bridge to reach it. And now it is time to turn away friends. But now is not the time to turn away friends. We need every ally we can get a hold of. The thought stung. The Infernal's attack on Caspia was still raw, bloody. It left scars so deep Julius was still discovering them. What do you propose, Majesty? The War Master asked. Unity. Survival. Julius lowered his voice. No matter the cost. War is no stranger in the Iron Kingdoms. Its name is inscribed on 1,000 times over every stone, but steel cannot fight shadow. As the Infernals claim their due, cities crumble, and thousands of lights went dark. A few noble souls held up a torch of hope, offering everything they had or ever would have to drive back the darkness. Such champions often faced opposition from unexpected corners, even from those they held dear. The great temple buzzed with activity, a vast beehive made of gleaming steel. Servitors and ascended priests housed in spidery vessels crawled over the looming arch, covering a crackling nodes. Iron Mother Directrix observed them, basking in their unity. Her peace was shattered when the entrance far overhead spiraled open. Aurora glided down into the enormous chamber on humming metal wings to land gracefully at Iron Mother's back. The girl was a flat note in the symphony, impossible to ignore. Is your foolishness at its end? Iron Mother did not turn from the fabrication of the Celestial Gate. Hardly, Aurora snipped. Her tone was sharp, victorious. I went looking for him. Right now, he's clinging to life. He almost lost fighting the invaders. His efforts are sentimentality, but useful. The gate nears its completion, and his actions have proven an adequate distraction, the Iron Mother said. Cyrus's arrival will render the invaders inconsequential. Aurora moved to impede her mother's view. While you hide here, Mother, the world beyond the temple dies. The Iron Mother brushed her daughter aside. This world dies so that the Maiden of Gears can remake it. Time is at hand for all things to ascend. Time we no longer have. The Iron Mother regarded Aurora, hurt and desperation written on her face. The friction between the pair was a pair of gears that could never fully mesh. She relented. Your new frame awakes. Take it. Find him. Perhaps he will listen. She weighed her words next. To his daughter. Calculated words could not be retracted. Sebastian Nemo had hardly refused her offer of transcendence. Sending Aurora off, she'd hoped to make him reconsider and free herself from a troublesome young woman while her great work reached its completion. Many have tried to account for all the souls that were claimed by the Infernals, but the toll was beyond any mortal ability to reckon. In the horrors that plague my mind, however, I can tell you they numbered in scores of thousands before the old rivalries were put aside and the tribes took arms together. Gorval Iris had long ago, it seemed now, knelt before his empress and her sorcerer consort. Both held their face as masks, though the Supreme Commandant could sense the displeasure concealed beneath. They were a pair of majestic statues clad in Cador's colors. After your last reprimand, I did not think another was required, the Empress said at long last. Her voice echoed through the chamber, words vanishing among the gathered throngs of silent onlookers. Iris wondered if they were there to witness his death. Nor I, Empress, Iris said. He didn't even bother with false bravado or humility. None would afford him much. And yet once again you are here, having failed your Empress and your nation, she said. His eyes moved to the shape at her left hand. It loomed in the shadows. That's where he's gone, Iris thought. Though rumors flew freely, there was no confirmed reports that the Butcher of Cardove fighting in Lael. The Supreme Commandant had hoped him dead, yet here he stood, panting like a hound, straining at the leash. Light caught the edge of the large man's axe, Lola. The Butcher's body bore fresh scars, his armor in despicable shape. He looked like a man who had swam an ocean of enemy blades to take down Iris this day. The mad raving hound of Cador, the bloodied butcher of men. What little light was once in his eyes had fled forever. I once denied you death, the Emperor said, hoping that you would yet prove yourself useful to our empire. Was I mistaken? Iris locked eyes with his murderer instead of the Empress. Perhaps, she continued. The blade that fails to cut once can be sharpened. If it fails again. The Empress's hand traced a line along the butcher's obscene axe head. If it fails again, you look for a better, sharper one. My Empress, Iris said, I live at your mercy. I die at your command. Her finger left the axe with a sharp ring that echoed as clear as her voice. Empress Anne Venar rose from her seat, walked towards Iris, the butcher close at hand. Rise, Supreme Commandant, she said. You are used to speaking with the Southerners. You will go to them and meet with their boy king as my emissary. Do not disappoint me. Iris bowed. Of course, my Empress. She motioned to the butcher. I am tired of sharpening blades, Iris. Why should I bother when I have one so keen at my disposal? The butcher's face twisted, the silent snarl of a rabid dog. New enemies require old enmities to sleep, and so strength came into the west for those who were once abandoned, marching across the blasted waste from their new home to fight their old one. The strength of Dunia arrived. A Trollkin might is unarguable, a troll's ferocity uncontestable. When they first came, fear transformed into a faint glimmer of hope. But would even their strength be enough to turn this tide? Tension crackled as the grim-faced Trollkin approached the gathering. Soot-streaked and tired from the march, he passed through a courtyard packed with trenchers and winter guard who looked warily on. Gunborn signaled a halt. In flawless Signarin, he said, "Or seek an audience." The soldiers parted to let a familiar man through the crowd. A prince, a king, a counselor, and a betrayer. Leto. Gunborn had to resist the urge to salute, old instincts hard to suppress. If Leto recognized him, he didn't show it. I am High Chancellor. Yes, Gunborn said. Our message has said that you arrived at our prepared for our arrival. The War Council is already meeting. Leto took in the troll force, notably the full-blooded trolls. He looked disheartened. Your oracle's message suggests there will be more. This is what, 100? Gunborn couldn't hide his grim smile. Just the ones I let into the fort. At his signal, one of his fell callers bellowed, a sound that boomed across the fort walls. Beyond the fort, another fell caller answered, and another. Soon the voices of Trollkin, the cries of pigs, and the rumble of dire trolls filled the air, threatening to split the sky. He savored the surprise on Leto's face. The army of the United Creoles stands with you, he said. Only bits of the world pierced the veil of his coma, muffled voices like soft whispers of a far-gone-off room, the gentle touch of his caretakers on his numbed skin. All else was darkness. Sebastian Nemo lingered in that place between waking and death. He dreamed, but they were fractured visions that became smoke when he drew close enough to grasp them. Old friends, old loves, all long past. His mind was his greatest gift, greater than any of his warcaster abilities. But in this void, the nowhere place, he could feel the walls of darkness drawing in around him. His body of flesh was an anchor. It drew him deeper each day. Time meant nothing, days or hours, all the same in such a place. The only measurement he had was the slow creep of the impermeable shadow as his mind softened and weakened in his state. It was a prison that grew smaller each time he tested its bounds. In his maddened prison of unmoving meat, Nemo sensed muffled voices. He felt a gentle touch on his skin. A familiar scent fired off in the deep parts of his mind, yellow-white explosions of memory that rose in the mire of his coma. Movement, distant and strange, rocked him in his prison, cycles of cold and warmth moving over him, where that familiar aroma became brassy and hot as if met to the touch of fire, the sun, It was the odor of late spring nights spent over lengthy books. The smell of her. Impossible. Everything about her, every lovely and familiar mote had been discarded, forgotten, left to rot unmarked in some forgotten place. Yet still her scent clung to him, pulled at him, pleaded with him to open his shutted eyes once more. She was in his dreams more often, calling him from beyond the crushing walls of his constraining mind. She begged him to wake. She shouted at him in her distant voice that time was running out. She began to hurt him. Not the heartache from before, but sharp, biting pain. If he had a voice, he would have told her to stop. Her words laced through his flesh like scalpels. They cut through the cotton that muffled his numbed skin. Like surgical tweezers, they plucked the wads that stuffed his unhearing ears. He felt pain. He heard the snarling snap of lightning, smelled the scent of roasting flesh. With a scream of pain, Nemo opened his eyes. A voice called. "He's back! He's up! Back away!" He looked upon a beautiful face. A face not of iron and not cold and iron, but warm flesh. Tears rose in her eyes. "Impossible," he managed to say, body still sharp with static from the current that they must have used. His swimming vision resolved into the state of Aurora, Newman of the Convergence. She broke into a revered smile. "Welcome back, Father." Iris wondered how many soldiers pointing guns at him had lost friends at his order. He did not find the question comforting. A timid Signarin approached, stumbling into the perimeter of the camp Iris had erected. "My king has sent me to consider your surrender." The man's eyes drifted to Iris' sword lying unsheathed on the ground. "Empress Iron Venar has commanded me to offer myself into Signarin hands," Iris said, handing the toady a parcel sealed with the imperial signet. The envoy's eyes bulged. "Under what conditions?" "The Empress fears for the security of our homeland and wishes to surround herself," Iris swallowed the bitterness in his throat, "with her most capable soldiers." The Signarin's face furrowed. "Meaning?" "I remain here," Iris said, "to face whatever justice your kings demand were. In return, you will liberate Commander Strakov to rejoin the Holy Land, his homeland." The line of Signarans beyond the camp balked. Some began to murmur. "One of you deliver this to the king," the envoy shouted to the soldiers, holding aloft the Empress's missive. "See that he gets it at once." "What about him?" a soldier said, pointing his rifle. "Shoot him!" another shouted. The Signarin envoy licked his teeth, considering his words. "No, a bullet would never do for the Supreme Commandant." Iris kept his face emotionless as the timid Signarin, finding his vigor, reached for the hilt of endgame. "It is tradition to die by the blade," he said. "War is an unjust thing. Often it returns its anguish on those who have already suffered its sting. So it was in Lael, where barely tasted the sweetness of freedom before new enemies sought to enslave it." And that was part 1 of the Henge Hold Scrolls summation. Get some water. And we can already tell things have gotten dire. Lael is now, of course, being besieged by the Infernals, with Ashlyn protecting the Queen Caitlin, who you didn't know was betrothed to King Julius Routhorn, but fled back to her homeland. The Empress Anya Venar has decided that Iris would be better served as a prisoner of war for the Signarans rather than as one of her commanders. The Butcher is now barely sane and only acts whenever the Empress wants her to. And Sebastian Nemo has been placed inside of a clockwork body, thanks to his daughter Aurora. So yeah, shit's getting real, but we're not done yet. We're just getting started. Let's head on to part 2. Ashland was covered in gore from the infernals. Much of it was blue, and all of it reeked. Down the hall, Mary Algillian's dark skin was a darker shade than that same blue. And though Ashland wasn't sure where Vine DeBrasco was, she suspected the gun mage looked the same. They had retaken the palace in Merowyn from the clawed horrors that had appeared along the iron highway to assault the city spires. Nobles like Molaire had already fled, Ashland heard, but no such thoughts had ever occurred to her or to her companions. Nightmares with pulsing veins floated among the traitorous infernalists, finally brave enough to reveal their true colors. Ashland dispatched them with her father's sword, sending their souls to their masters. 2 rapid-fire cannon explosions and 2 dead infernalists signaled DeBrasco's return from the royal quarters. "The Queen, she's safe," he called out. "The Queen is safe," Marie answered. "Speak the language, Vine." "You understand, yes?" Then I spoke fair enough. Ashland gutted of infernalists with an eye patch. "We need to move her." Marie curled her lip. "You don't mean the Lael Passage, do you?" "Never. Her palace is within Merowyn. Her place is within Merowyn. The deserters, they're no longer Lallies. They can leave and never return." "Aha!" Vane DeBrasco gunned a horror from the air and closely closed the grip on their triad. "Ever the Queen's blade, so do I. Even the Queen's blade speaks as I do." Marie ignored him. "So where do we hide her?" Ashland's response was curtailed by the high brassy notes of trumpets behind the walls. Marie's eyes bulged. Vane raised his mage lock and cocked his head. "How dare they?" he breathed. "Our own military?" The trumpets sounded again, more mournful, despondent than before. "They can't," Marie groaned. Vane made a guttural, furious noise in the back of his throat. Ashland killed 3 infernalists with such fervor that the other 2 began to flee from her reach. She snarled, "This will not stand. Not while I breathe." The trumpeting ended abruptly. "They're retreating," Vane said in disbelief. "Or surrendering," said Marie. Ashland shook her head. "Unless they're dying, no one stops fighting for Lael unless I command it, and I do not." "The scrolls tell me much. Not all makes sense. Some things are so unlikely they seem to ride against the flow of history and destiny. It was as if blood and flesh at long last united, who strove to forever separate themselves from the cold metal." Aurora held her father's frail hand. Her father. The words still feel unreal. For so long as he had been a Neblonious figure in her imagination, now he was here. And he was dying. "Where are we?" Nemo asked. His glassy eyes drifted around the temple's interior, unable to focus on anything. "Somewhere safe," Aurora said, caressing the back of his weathered hand. It was a temple abandoned after a shift in the geomagnetic web, old and empty. "You look so alike," Nemo whispered, struggling to touch her face. His hand was clammy and clumsy. It fell limp to his side. She touched his lips. "Quiet now. We haven't much time." "For what?" Nemo asked. Aurora chewed her lip with uncertainty. She knew her father opposed what she had planned, but there was no other way. "I spent my life wondering who you are," Aurora said, "and I refuse to lose you now. Not when I can do something about it." Nemo looked up, eyes focusing on the apparatus that surrounded them. His weak breath whistled as he drew in and aghast. This device of soul transference waited. "No," Nemo breathed. "I beg you, no!" Aurora shook her head. "There's no other way. Your body dies soon." She turned from him. not trying not to hear his pleas. With a gesture, the optiflexes she had brought in to the task began their work. The old temple awoke with a deep purring of an enormous, contented beast about to enjoy a meal. As the soul transference began, Aurora looked back at the frail body lying below the device. His face was a mask of betrayal and confusion. He was clearly ready to die, but she would not let him. His old body twisted in pain as he called out to her. Why? I do not want this, he shouted. Bolts of energy laced through his body, charring his flesh. The machine pulled everything that was Sebastian Nemo from the body that he had once inhabited. As the machine died down, the sound of charred flesh crackling replaced with its mechanical purr. Aurora plucked a glowing cylinder from the mechanism, cradling it like a bird in her hands. Because we need you, Father. Now and forever. Time is a vortex, drawing in all things to their conclusion. Some are buffeted by its tide, caught in a force they cannot resist. Others pit their meager strength against inevitability and struggle to the last. A few, marked by fate and fortune, see the opportunity to ride the currents of the vortex, carried by the gulf between escape and oblivion. They can catapult free from destiny or be drawn into the blackest depths. Well, at least they let you keep your sword, Oleg Strakov said. The commander's burnt flesh had twisted his already charred mouth into a deep snarl on one side. And you, your looks, Iris replied. Strakov didn't respond to the slight. Since leaving Signar, the assault commander had been in high spirits, listing indulgences back home that he planned for his return. It was out of character for the one-eyed killer to be so cheerful. And what did they say? Strakov asked as the pair approached the inner doors of Staskryov Palace. My freedom is predicated on delivery of a message to the Empress, Iris replied. One I fear she would not take lightly. Strakov clapped his bandaged hands, wincing in pain. An errant boy for a boy king. Are you to deliver a proclamation of war? As the throne room door swung open to reveal the court, Iris said, something far worse. They crossed the room and knelt before the Empress. She sipped wine, taking her time with them before speaking. I would offer you a drink, but I did not prepare for so many guests, she said. Iris, were my commands unclear? No, my Empress, Iris said. He kept his head bowed like the condemned at the headsman's block, appropriately enough. Yet you graced this court with your appearance. Were the terms of your surrender not accepted? They were not. The Empress descended from her dais, touching Strakov's patron with a light hand, but she spoke to Iris. Illuminate us. Julius offers this. The Iron Kingdoms must stand together while there is still something worth fighting for. She waited for a moment, disgusted by the words. Her scowl grew. Then she barked with laughter. Idiot. His nation bleeds, and now he begs the wolves to give him peace, she said. I believe hope motivated him, Empress, not desperation. Be silent, she snapped. You were warned before, Iris. Failure is not a quality I admire. He awaited her command to the butcher, the one that sent the madman's axe swinging. But another voice came low, resonant, filling the chamber. Anya, Vit. Vladimir Tepeshis rose from his seat and took the Empress's hand. As she turned to face him, he spoke, soft enough that Iris could barely hear it. A great wind blows, cold and cruel. If we do not face it together, we will face it alone. We will fight it alone. Their eyes locked for a moment. Looking up at the great prince and imperial consort, Empress Vanar seemed to consider his words. Without looking at Iris, the Empress said, What else did the boy say? Destiny like a great machine ticking down our final days. As darkness grows, some pull at each other like lodestones and iron. Others are forced apart, broken pieces that will never truly unite. At the heart of it all, one glowing soul bonded to two others, polarizing them, pushing them apart like a fundamental force. What could have bridged their bridge instead of a barrier? Mother had known all along. Of course she had. A part of Aurora suspected that the Directrix had even guided her actions. Not that it changed her punishment. Mother awaited her return to the temple complex with a cell waiting. What is she doing with him? Axis, the harmonic enforcer, shrugged. He stood between Aurora and the doors as a warden. Deciding. It's not her decision to make. Axel cocked his helmed head. It was yours? Frustrated, Elora ignored him. She listened for any clue of what might transpire in the temple above. Though distant, the modulated voices of clockwork vessels droned throughout the walls, the familiar tone of the Iron Mother, the loudest of them all. The cell doors, Iris opened. The young woman Athenor Locke stood beyond the aperture. The Directrix demands your presence, she said. Axis moved to escort Aurora out, but Locke intervened. She wants you to join the obstructors guarding the entrance. Without a word, the large warcaster brushed Locke aside and clomped down into the temple's tunnels. When his footsteps faded, Locke exhaled with relief. Damn, he bought it. Hurry, there isn't much time. What are you doing? Putting my neck out for you, Locke said, ushering Aurora along. Your mother and the others are deciding what to do with Nemo's soul. It isn't going in his favor. We must stop them. That's the plan, Locke said. Just be yourself. Moments later, the pair burst into the chamber. Iron Mother, Forge Master Syntherion, and Eminent Configurator Orion debated over Nemo's soul vessel. When Iron Mother's gaze fell upon Aurora, her mantle of blades flexed and her fingers snapped in restrained anger. Iron Mother swept the others aside with a bladed cloak. Their eyes fell on Locke and Aurora. You follow folly with impudence, Iron Mother directed, and bring lo another promising worshipper with you. Why are you here? Orion asked. To prevent you from making a critical mistake, Aurora said. A subject in which you are very versed, daughter. Mother and daughter faced each other down. The other leaders of the Convergence moved closer, Aurora readied for a fight. Now! Shouted Locke. There was a confused movement. Everyone turned towards the woman. The great glass constellation overhead shattered as a clockwork angel descended. Prefect Hippolyta swooped down to Nemo's forgotten soul. She snatched it and returned to the air. Before anyone else could react, runes spun on Locke's wrist. Her spell detonated like a bomb among them, hurling them back. Aurora's ears rung, but she could read Locke's cry on her lips. Time to run. A few grasp the necessity of war beyond the obvious desire to live, and yet to lay down one's life for one's cause feels noble. To do so to ensure the survival of one's species feels desperate. Desperation is often all one has when someone like me can offer no other emotion. They pushed against a line of horrors with a storm of steel. Rattling sluggers sent lines of fire over the battlefield on the eastern flank. To the west, Stormblade's glaives crackled with brilliant blue light. Jeremiah Cray and his warjacks wove through amongst the chaos, pitting iron hulls and ordnance against nightmare-born muscle and sinew. A shell burst in front of him in smoke and fire. Malagant's hooves clawed at the air. Cray pulled at the reins and steadied his carbine. Across the battlefield, once some speck on the map outside of Caspia that now teemed with cultists, a howling creature laid into Trokan warriors. Cray put everything into his shot, guiding the bullet and urging it forward. It took the creature in the neck and most of the shop wall behind it. The Trokan pressed on into the smoke. His orders: meet with a trencher platoon and provide warjack support. The Infernalists built another damn gate. He was sent to destroy it. Simple enough on paper. With 100 allied Kriel warriors, they said it would be simple. It wasn't. Cultists and beasts boiled up in the streets from every sewer around every corner. Friendly artillery fire fell like hail, and foul magic stained the air and rotted allies' flesh. Our senses are often more filled with death than life, though we would notice the latter more than the former nears. Clouds of blasting powder, smoke, and soot from the smokestacks choke the streets. It is dark, the artificial twilight of an obscured sun. The air burns to breathe, scratching at the throat and the lungs. In this darkness, orange bursts of muzzle fire and the crackle of rifles mixed with the cries of battle. Challengers roared at opponents' screams of pain and the piercing shriek of the unseen monsters in the haze. The blanket of smoke, the stress of fighting, all turns the street into an oven. There was no air to stir up a breeze, just the packed heat of mobs of men and women, the cherry glow of coals in the sizzling furnaces. Buildings are vague shapes. Some glows from fire inside, flames roaring through the windows. Broken timbers jut out like splintered bones from the roofs, and walls cave in by errant artillery shells. Beyond the cobbled streets, there was once a park. Trees burnt like torches, the manicured lawns chewed up by the advance and retreat of soldiers, by the hoofs of heavy cavalry and the tread of machines. Fountains turned into temporary foxholes, fountains turned into temporary foxholes or stained pink from the bodies floating in their shallow waters. Statues of old heroes and kings chipped away by gunfire into vague silhouettes of gray-white stone. In the park's center, a grand arch, built to commemorate some long-forgotten historical event, trimmed with patina green bronze. Faint lines of something organic marred the white marble faces like creeping ivy. But this ivy grows thick and sinewy, throbs and bulges. The living veins of something otherworldly grows among the stones. An alphabet of runes glowed along its columns, across its top, so foul that they almost seem alive. They wriggled and twisted under the eye, trying to escape the grasp of scrutiny. Looking at them too long makes the eyes water, drills into the skull like a hangover. Deep crimson light glows at the arch's center, casting the surrounding into an otherworldly glow. It rippled like a heat mirage on a summer desert. It fills the air with a piercing whine that made mortar rattles and stomachs churn. From this light, shapes emerge into the world, profane, disgusting forms of rubbery white flesh, talons of jet bone, mocking reflections of the human body, as malformed as the fractured statues before them. Their howls were the sounds of tortured souls begging for release. The squadrons advanced the gate through the blood-soaked grass, taking cover when they can. They fired at the growing mob of creatures, ripping through their bodies, but still they advanced. They grow in numbers, slithering into the world like unready births. Trollkin fire their oversized weapons, laying down a storm of rapid-fired sluggers, titanic sprays of buckshot that could punch holes in a battleship. A roaring dire troll hurls a smoldering barrel at them that momentarily robs the world of sound. Still, more of the things come. They crawl over the mangled bodies of their dead, sprinting into battle with soldiers and Trollkin in a frenzy of talon and scything blades. The battle turns against them. A warjack turns its limb and has its limb ripped off and hurled aside to flatten a group of soldiers. Cavalry are bogged down by the dozens. Horses and riders scream as they are torn apart. The scrolls reveal much about who will fight, who will flee, and who will stand in bewilderment. But the scrolls do not promise this as anyone's final state. Despite desperate horns sound retreat, wounded and panicked soldiers fall back from their positions, trampling over those unable to get out of the way. The crackling voices and shrieks of pain mercifully muffle the crackling of broken bones. The newborn mob struggles to flee. They become easy prey for the beasts at their backs. The weight presses bodies into the walls, stiff and squeezing the life out of them. A shower of gore from those in the rear splays over the rest like a thick sheet of red. Then, something overhead. The already dim light deepens further as a great shadow passes over the park. Down draws swirl the smoke, ripping a hole in the sky. A huge shape of armor and guns hangs overhead, as long as a battleship with great turbines train in the air. A klaxon spins with it. Then a ripple of gunfire lights up from its belly. A shrieking chorus precedes the barrage that crawls across the ground, stitching a line of orange fire through the creatures and into the gate. The soldiers can't believe that they cannot hear their leaders' shouted commands. They don't need to. While the guns of the sky ship above cycle with fresh shells, they turn back as one. Across the field of churned earth and shattered limbs, they advance. King Julius Ralthorn watched the Cadoran vessels slowly move over Caspia. Even from a great distance, he could feel the punch in their cannons in his gut. Pillars of smoke grew from the streets whenever they flew. It seems the Empress got his message. What makes the impossible possible? Perseverance, desperation, sheer force of will. While I see the impossible, I also see the possible. And when the two join, my visions can change without paradox and disparity. Stranger days may yet be probable. What is this thing? Aurora asked. The spherical machine dominated the heart of the temple of the incomplete axiom, standing high as a house. About 10,000 crowns worth of parts and a few months of work, Locke replied. Why would you build this? You could have known Nemo or what I would do. I didn't even know. Locke shrugged. I'm a mechanic. I had to build something. It looks Signarin, I know. I had a supplier in Corvus with some components. If this works, then what? Aurora asked. Honestly, I was hoping you'd answer that one, Locke said. Aurora cradled Nemo's vessels. An ancient Iosan told me Nemo's mind held a key. Ooh, vague. That's fun. He said it would be our salvation. Then I hope he was right. We could use some salvation right about now, Locke said. I hope so too. Maybe Nemo knows somewhere safe, or he has a machine to fly over the Meridius away from the Infernals, Locke asked. Aurora didn't respond, staring up at the great machine. You want to do the honors? Aurora hesitated. She wrenched Nemo's mortal life away, denied him peace. When he awoke, how would he respond? No. The time for doubt was past. It died on a cold metal slab in the final beat of Sebastian Nemo's heart. Aurora plunged the soul chamber into its waiting port. Light sparked across the machine, dim but glowing to a bright blue. Static charge built, streaks spiking off Aurora's metal armor. Bolts of lightning sprang from the machine to crawl along the interior of the dark temple. In a voice that discharged of a dozen storm chambers, Nemo spoke. I was dead. I have returned. I'm sorry, Aurora said. There was no other way. Nemo's mechanical eye fixed on her. We must hurry. There is much to do. But even the noblest efforts can fail. fabric woven from the strongest threads tears. The patchwork of Western Immorin began to falter, giving blood, body, and soul to the defiant efforts. Yet light began to shine in the dimmest of the stars that burned brightly to offer hope. And that was part 2. We're getting somewhere, ladies and gentlemen. The Signarans and the Cadorans have formed the proper alliance, not the first alliance since the Thornwood invasion by the Cricks. Nemo is now primed to be potentially the salvation of all of Immorin. So, what's going to happen? We still got a lot to go through. Let's go to part 3. But even the noblest efforts... Oh, sorry, we already went through that. We have reaped the rewards of the wicked harvest. Our legions grow, rasped Asphyxius. What troubles thee, Red Raven Mane? Scar swirled the warm blood in her scrying vessel. The Mar can no longer hide her sin, and I have seen what comes next. And what does that what does she mean, my lord? Asked Denegra. She means our herd is threatened. Aye, said Scar. They will leave us with nothing. Surely they are no match for Lord Toruk, Denegra said. No, our dragon father will take time to heal, the Lich said. Time we do not have. Denegra paced. Then what we will do? Asphyxius glided before Denegra and caressed her cheek with his iron talon. My dear, is it not obvious? We will save the nations of men. The crack of his weapons splitting the beast's skull was satisfying. He relished the spray of its unnatural blood on the ochre sand. This was a war without end. Xerxes found it immensely gratifying. Despite recent setbacks in the western reaches, the Scorn had found bounties of slaves and conflict. Many had become exalted in battle. Not every foe was suited to bondage in the east. A pity, but one could not have everything, could they? A phalanx of cataphracts on his right side encircled one of the new foe's great beasts, a creature of blood and bone, many-limbed that spewed black blood from its many wounds. Xerxes moved his mount to join them, gore dripping from Lamentor. He swung his first swing atop Suruk, splintered one of the thing's talons. The beast retreated, but he moved after it. The next blow crushed its face like an earthen pot. The beast's excuse for lifeblood seeped from the ruin of its skull. One of the extollers, a soul ward, approached him after the battle. Tyrant, I beg to speak, the extoller said. Xerxes bade him to continue with a gesture. My attempts to claim the souls of worthy have fallen before have been stymied. How so? Their spirits no longer linger. It's as if this new foe sups them up. A smile crossed Xerxes' face. Wonderful. At last, the Scorn had found a way to escape the tortures of the Void. Ashlyn didn't want to believe what she was hearing, but the messenger, a nondescript traveler with a Lali's accent who she decided had little reason to lie in the audience with her, seemed sincere and earnest. Signar and Kador, he said again, have allied. She couldn't tell herself that she was surprised. Furious, yes. Betrayed, yes. But she had seen sufficient fickleness and self-serving self-preservation among the leaders of both countries that she was no longer taken aback by anything they might do, especially at Lael's expense. How did you come by this information? She finally asked. Personal observation, the messenger said, donning his hat as if the conversation were concluded and he was prepared to depart. It was not unlike seeing a dragon with 2 heads. Do they march this way? I do not believe so. Not at the moment, anyway. I think they are overwhelmed by the common enemy that seems to be descending upon us all. They may seek you out to join them, of course. Ashlyn hardly imagined the vulgarity she'd bring to reject such an offer, but this was not the moment to envision her rage if it happened. Instead, she needed to address the messenger's other request: protected passage to Lerin. I can spare 2 fighters to get you there as a thanks for the information, she said. Though even that stuck in her craw much too many. After that, you are on your own, Gavin Kyle. The messenger nodded tiredly as he gathered up his baggage. I am offered, madam. In the days that followed Nemo's clockwork transcendence, he had learned what Aurora had put aside to preserve his essence. The entire membership of the Convergence had torn down the middle following her escape. Only half remained loyal to the Iron Mother. To them, Aurora was a traitor to the cause and betrayer of the great work. Others, mostly smaller cells outside the inner circle, sought her out to join strength. Nemo levitated above a machine orrery, one more celestial object among many. Below, inscribed lines depicted Emerin in patches of light growing with concentrations of opposing forces. She gathers at Hengehold, he said. Yes. Mother had engineers prepare a gateway for transport there. That site possesses a unique geomagnetic resonance that she believes can expedite her plan. That being? To bring Cyrus to Cain, she said. Nemo's mind whirled. That is... He paused, searching for the right word. Ambitious. The initial tests were promising. The gate works. She will have it guarded well for the transport to the Henge. We require this device. What are you planning? Aurora asked skeptically. Acquisition of the gate. If it truly works, represents the best possible chance for survival. Do you think her plan will work? No. Not as she envisaged it. Possible an inversion would, Nemo said. You want to take people through the gate, she said. Nemo rotated, stuttering the orrery. Beyond it. Not just people. The void above is an unknown sea, which we cannot cross without a vessel. How many people? He cut her off. All of them, if I could. Otherwise, as many as possible. Any resources you do not require to capture the gate you must adapt your machines. Prepare your agents in these other cities to guide the refugees. This is the new great work. The world has become finite. The ways it changes are infinite. Predictability is gone, as many have predicted. Expectations, however, still live on, even in the unexpected. I do not have names, Vane de Brascio said. The gun mage and Marie Algilian stood behind Ashlyn as one of the palace balconies overlooking the streets of Merowyn. She kept her back to him, as if she was scanning the city below for deserters. Marie glanced at Vane, who simply shrugged. Ashlyn seemed to become numb to ill tidings. She had said little to them about the alliance between Kador and Signar, yet this news that the military was secretly organizing flights from Lael made her tremble with rage. We could stop them, Marie offered, but Ashlyn held up her hand and silenced her. Tell me the rest. The Queen's blade bit each word as she spoke. Vane cleared his throat. The rest is as it is but a rumor. Still it is believed by many. The soldiers are taking our citizens to Hengehold, Marie cut in. In Signar, Vane said hopefully. And from there, the story is they're leaving Emerin to be saved from this invasion. Vane said, but it's not confirmed, of course. Ashlyn turned to them, her face composed but her eyes burning. It's that old man, the hermit. He thinks he's a shepherd of some sort, and he's spreading fear to convince people to follow him. Vane licked his lips and touched his mage lock. Do you want I should find him? The city stood, but the land is dying. Every day refugees came from Seoul, from forgotten villages across the Protectorate. They were the survivors. Far too many others had fallen. Sovereign Tristan Durant tried to offer them hope, but his own waned. Every day, infernal forces struck at Sewell, testing the defenses in new ways. They assailed the walls and emerged within, aided by cells of cultists. The land stunk from the burning dead. The tired, the hungry, the unwashed masses were given spears and told to fight as if they could still stand. Outside, blazing columns of cavalry rode through the hordes, but few returned each night. His mask was stifling. He pulled it free despite the crowd below. "Be joyful," Tristan said, "for those we see on the other side did not die to the enemy's hunger, but to their own. Their souls are intact, ready for the journey to the city of man." Sob-racked mothers, orphans, widows among the mob. Some clung to the hands of the gathered dead lying along the streets beneath the temples. "We are abandoned!" a man cried out. A squall of exemplars dragged him from the mob for his heresy. "We are not!" Tristan called over his cries. "Menoff has given us many gifts. Law, wall, shaft, and flame. But above all these, his greatest gift is one another. There is no shadow that can overcome such a light." He spread his arms to encompass all gathered. "Many feel alone who live in such these times as these, but we are not. Cling to one another. Share the flame of your kindness and strength with one another. Together, we are stronger than we are alone." Tristan spoke a benediction over the dead, thanking them for their lives that they shared with those left behind. He encouraged their spirits to pass into the next world, and closed with words thanking Menoff for the gifts of life he had bestowed. As they hauled off the bodies to the incinerator, Tristan Durant saw his words had comforted some. They wiped away their tears, had some glimmer of hope. He wished he could say the same about himself. Cador's arrival in Caspia gave them a chance. A few days later, barges filled with Rulic mercenaries arrived on the Black River. Trollkin, Orgrin, dwarves, and the armies of 2 Iron Kingdoms took to the streets of the great city, fighting against an endless tide. From overhead, Signarin and Cadoran ships reduced whole blocks to ashes. The flying machines were potent tools, but they couldn't be everywhere. By the time one appeared overhead to support, it was often too late to make a difference. For every force they crushed, though, a fresh one rose in its place. Magnus had faced the same leaders, masters, multiple times. No matter how devastating the wounds he landed, the damn masters just appeared again. His force, a mixture of mercenaries, Signarans, and Trollkin, had merged with Strakov's assault commandos. They fought their way to Castle Ralthorn, street by street, culling down infernals the whole way. Their losses were already high. At each wall, Magnus kept a tally of the dead. When they arrived at the castle, Strakov pulled him aside. "My marauders can breach the gate. After that," he spreads his hands. "No more coil. Get in it and get us in. Julius wouldn't want him scuffing his floors anyway." The Cadoran smiled and closed his eyes, instructing his warjacks. Magnus had his soldiers spread out to protect them. This wouldn't be quiet. "Ready," Strakov said. "All right, prepare for an attack," Magnus said. "A gallon of Vyaka to the most kills." They didn't have to wait very long. The mortar of the marauders rams, the booming of the marauders rams through the door drew the infernals in like flies to a corpse. Pale grievers swarmed into the forecourt, mouth-like orifices hungrily snapping at the air. "Volley fire!" Magnus shouted. He fired into the oncoming swarm, blowing a griever to bloody meat. Rifles cracked and grenades flew at the infernals. They were returned by vomiting streams of corrosive, burning bile. Magnus's soldiers died screaming. When the smoke cleared, dozens of infernals lay dead. The rest fell back in retreat. "Almost through," Strakov called out. "About damn time," Magnus wanted to shout, but what he saw froze the words in his throat. The Grievers were the vanguards of a massive force comprised of humanoid howlers, robed figures, and enormous beasts that defied reason. They were too many to count. "Into the fucking palace!" Magnus cried, taking up a mental map of the layout, trying to remember the fastest route to the throne room. "Take the east stairwell behind the Barbican." The survivors rushed in. As a final barrier, Strakov crashed his marauders shoulder to shoulder at the door. They moved through the strangely quiet Imperial Palace, boots clattering against the pristine floor. A shrieking pack of nightmares came snapping at their heels. Not everyone was fast enough to outpace them. Soldiers fell under trampling howlers. Trollkin turned to face the mob, buying the rest time with their heroic deaths. When Magnus entered the throne room and barred the door, they were down to platoon strength. The door shuttered under the massive impact. Magnus backed up, levying his scattergun. He could hear the scraping of the talons on the other side. "This won't hold," Strakov said, priming his carbine. The shrieks of feral machines sounded beyond the door. It was a mixture of cries of the infernals in a hellish chorus, driven by the beat of metal and flesh. The air began to stink of spilled blood, hot metal, and choking fumes. Magnus waited after the sounds faded before peering into the hall. Infernal corpses littered the floor, their foul blood staining the royal tapestries. They had been ripped apart. "Guard this room," Magnus said. Lieutenant Harcourt moved to comply. Magnus and Strakov stalked out, weapons ready, to the nearest window. In the city below, green lights glowed. Dozens of bone jacks and hell jacks, accompanied by reeking mobs of thralls throughout the city streets. Impossibly, the Crixians seemed to be turning the tide. The undead moved the vast infernal horde back, cutting it off at dead-end streets. Though the Crixians suffered immense losses, they seemed to be winning the battle of attrition. "The souls," Magnus whispered. "The dead are starving them," Strakov said. "They cannot consume something that is not there." Two shapes swooped into view. A dark king, accompanied by his black princess, riding on a wings of shadow and rotting levitation of flesh and metal. Asphyxius and Denegra, on high, showering magic down on the infernal targets. Strakov grinned. "We need to get word to Iris and Grunbach. Krix has given us a chance to drive these things from Caspia. Let us not let it go to waste." Asphyxius descended, a dark guardian angel, towards the awestruck mortal throng. If he had the flesh to smile, he could not have concealed the pleasure. With a sweep of his blade, he gestured across the sea of red and blue-garbed soldiers. "Be not afraid," Asphyxius said, his voice booming across the Caspian square. "For I am merciful." Several haggard warcasters approached. Asphyxius recognized old rivals he had faced time and again. Iris was there. Old Asheth Magnus. They were rugged, they were weary. The weight of the Crixians behind him, his mob hissing thralls and jacks, had hard to ignore. "Why?" was Iris' only word. Asphyxius regarded him with a baleful eye. "Art thou lost? Thine empress must be worried." "Why?" the warcaster repeated more forcefully. Magnus lit a match and lifted it to a cigar. "It's a ploy. Has to be." "Nay, not a ploy, nor a plot. An act of pity. A pledge to the scribbling mortals," Asphyxius said, "that all creatures infernal shall perish at our soulless command. Humanity has a new savior this day." Magnus stepped forward now, his good eye boring into Asphyxius' own. Clouds of blue cigar smoke leaked from his mouth. "You forgot someone," he growled, the mercenary showing no hesitation or fear as he faced off against the Lich Lord. "What is thy meaning?" "You aren't soulless, mate." Magnus tapped on Asphyxius' black iron flame with his own mechanical hand. It may not be it in there, but it's in there somewhere. Maybe somewhere hard to find, but after today, they'll be looking. Days mold into weeks, weeks spun into months, and the tide of battle ebbed and flowed across the Iron Kingdoms. Like the rebellion that shaped this land, alliances between unlikely parties were needed to keep the spark of hope alive and growing. Living and dead fought together against the Infernals. Black-clads struggled to keep their wilds. My people struck bargains with our bitter rivals. For a time, at least, it seemed that there might be a chance to hold back the darkness. Her closest allies were gone, and Ashlyn was alone. She had sent Mary in vain to do the work she could no longer felt that she could trust even her highest-ranking officers to do. Halt the military support of turning the citizens of Lael into refugees. Barring that, they were commanded to get every Laolis soul to safety, including themselves. It was tempting to allow Vayne to seek out this so-called hermit who was the voice of doom and gloom across all of Western Emerald and then bring the old man's visions to a bloody halt. I bet you wouldn't see that one coming, she thought. But ultimately she knew that it would be killing a prophet for daring to prophesize. It wasn't the hermit's words that were driving even the most patriotic zealot to flee their homelands. It was the gibbering, slavering monstrosities descending upon them doing this. And now the palace was painfully quiet as she made her way to the queen's throne room. The normal bustle of the domestics and royal guards had been reduced to a quivering silence of isolated soldiers, those who were either too devoted or too afraid to leave their posts. As she ascended the stairwell, she heard the sound from the gate, the snarling of the starving hordes that could smell souls within. They were fearless, without caution, and whenever they breached the walls, they were destroyed, but not before taking souls of many soldiers with them. When she entered the throne room, she knew instantly that Caitlin de la Martine could hear those infernal nightmares as well. The tears of the young queen's cheeks spoke of her fatalism. "My queen," Ashlyn said softly, "I'm afraid it's time." "What you mean is, there is time," Caitlin answered. "We've nowhere else to be." Ashlyn shook her head. You do. Someplace safe. The military is leading our people to Hengehold. From there, they will travel beyond the reach of these monsters. I heard this flight of fancy already. It's likely a protectorate plot or a scorn trick. If I will not leave our land, Caitlin tightened her grip on the arms of her throne, as if Ashlyn meant to pry them from her seat. I trust your soul, and mine feels the same. Where the queen goes, so does the queen's blade, Ashlyn said. She almost smiled. She imagined she sounded like Vayne. At least that would be my assumption. I'm as new to this as you are. Then we are together? Ashlyn nodded. Of course, my queen. Until the end. The queen sighed. Why must everything always be life or death? Because, Ashlyn answered, that's all there ever is. Is that what you truly believe? The queen's eyes watered more. When was the last time you felt happiness, my blade? Or honestly enjoyed life? Ashlyn drew her Essok, the two-handed sword that her father had called Almas, the Almace, that she had renamed Revengeance, and held it up to inspect it. The howl of monsters and men made into monsters echoed in the palace gates. She looked up at her queen. Just now, she said. The proud army of the western reaches gathered at the boundary of Ios. Rank and file stood in perfect position, framed blocks of cataphracts and praetorians. The war beasts remained still, yoked under the will of their masters. It was a gathering enough to make even the Iosans tremble in their white fortress. Many thousands would be proud to die at Makeda's command, to hurl themselves against the Iosans in a wave of flesh and bone. But the Supreme Archdomina stood under a banner of peace. An Iosan host rode out from the fortress on horseback. It is Incisor Viros, said the Iosan slave who stood next to her. He was a prize plucked from Makeda's aborted war with the Iosans, who was now her translator. The leader of the Dawn Guard. Makeda's warriors made way for the Iosans. They remained wary, hands at their great swords as if they approached. The slave spoke. Makeda understood the language, but wanted her counterpart to hear her words in his own tongue. The Supreme Archdomina Makeda of the Scorn Empire offers you safety in this council, the slave said. Has she had enough soldiers? Has she lost enough soldiers fighting us? Viros asked dryly. Or does she seek our mercy? The incisor regarded her with his remaining eye. Tell him that the Scorn Empire comes with a proposal, she said. While her slave translated, she studied Viros, judging him from his posture. A skilled fighter, no doubt, but he bore himself with weariness that betrayed long days of fighting against their new mutual foe. Here to beg the release of Scorn prisoners? Tell her it's too late. They're long dead. She chose her words carefully. They needed to guide the Iosans toward her desired end, but not reveal her true purposes. The translator slowly conveyed her message. The slave began, The spirits of the void walk the world, indiscriminate in their hunger. They are within our western holdings, and we assume among your own. We have spilled much of each other's blood, but it was the blood of the living, not the filth of these beasts. Does she not ask shelter within Ios? Never, Viros said. Makeda asks this. Allow the army of the western reaches to fight with your people. Let her join her strength with yours, so there might be enough survivors on both sides, so that one day to resume our honorable conflict. Viros scowled. Utter nonsense, he said. Makeda instructed the slave. Her words shocked the Iosan, making him stammer. Makeda offers this token as a sign of her worthy intent. She gestured, and the lines of Praetorians parted. Taskmasters led chains of captive Iosans through the gaps. They stared at the distant fortress with longing. All the spoils of our war returned to your control, her translator said. Though he didn't say much, the enslaver spoke loud. Look, the enslaver spoke in desperation. The Viros rubbed his chin. And if I refuse? Makeda replied. The translator's throat bobbed as he gulped. She says, in light of this new foe, caring for so many slaves is impossible, and she would have to dispose of them. Makeda leaned back and spread her hands. In the Iosan tongue, she spoke for herself. Do we have an agreement? Asphyxius took great pleasure in the moment of his foe's demise. Through his Helljack's bond, he could feel the pulverized flesh of infernals and cultists give way beneath their talons. He could see the fractured spirit below the bone by the bodies like smoke. From Caspia west to Or, the Lich Lord was smiting as a smiting angel against the infernals. The living could only follow his trail like scavenging dogs, witnessing his glowing tally of victories. Denegra flew her necrotic beast down to join him. What news, witch? She gestured west. There are scouts of a larger group outside of Tarna. How fares Scar? Ravenmane ships are at the Dragon's Tongue. They raid to provide fire support and reinforcements. Let us not keep our foes in abeyance, Asphyxius said. To his Scarlog of Vorticifern, he gave orders to his thrall to clean up the stragglers, and he brought his Helljacks to his side. Another victory awaited him. He marched to Tarna through the blasted lands, bodies of the infernal victims littering the countryside. Overripe fruits of forgotten harvests. Shells of towns on the road stood empty. Auric and Crucible warjacks were inert, their controllers long dead. What fools these mortals be, he thought. The living had no hope of victory against his foe. Only one as perfect as he could dream of triumph. As he approached the city, the full scale of the inversional force unfolded before him. Their presence darkened the world, muting its color and light to a dull gray. They clawed and scrambled at Tarna's walls. Above, a priest exalted the city's guards to keep fighting, while two glowing avatars of Moro battered the beasts with lantern-drunk mobs. Asphyxius spotted his target at the heart of the Infernals, a living tower of flesh wreathed in smoke. One of their masters, a looming figure clad in black iron. At his silent gesture, the whole army's Infernals surged towards Tarna's defenses. Here was his prize. Let the Infernals face the might of an unliving god. Asphyxius and his Helljacks charged into the Infernals, his machines trampling forward to clear him a bloody path. Any creatures that survived the onslaught met their end at Daimonion's edge. He did not wait for Ravenmane's cannons or Denegra or their army of thralls. He would seize this victory by his own iron claws. The headlong charge brought him and the master together. Turn and face thy destruction, he shouted, for thou confront the Lich Lord of the Dragonfire. One of the Infernal Master's oversized flails lashed out, bursting his power field and smashing Asphyxius back. Denegra flew at Tarna, high above the battlefield. She watched in muted horror as below an enormous Infernal launched an assault against Asphyxius. The Lich Lord retaliated with an onslaught of dark magic with his Helljacks and his blade, but the Infernal gave no ground. She dove to give aid as the Infernal's flail caught Asphyxius's dented frame. Pieces of shattered off of his body. Another strike, and his bleached skull was ripped free. A final blow, and the Infernals pulverized the Lich Lord's body to scrap. Asphyxius's Helljacks went inert. Yeah, that happened. Lich Lord Asphyxius, the most infamous and feared of the Iron Liches of Kryx, is dead. This is how real shit has gotten. This is how real it's gotten. This is a bunch of characters that are dying off. This is a major warcaster for the game itself. Asphyxius is dead. This is it. He's dead. I think he's the first named character in the entire series to die in Oblivion. And he went out defending people. So there's that. But let's move on to part 4. Tristan Durant pulled a hand through his hair as he studied the ledger before him. The scroll detailed recent deaths needed final rites. It was far too long. Whole towns worth of names written out with little art or care. Another tally of victims to cross his path. What troubles you? Asked Nadira. The Idrian monk of the Order of the Fist had taken to acting as his personal guard, keeping watch over Tristan both night and day. He looked at her, shaking away his clouded thoughts. Nothing. Just some bookkeeping. She studied him, paring down one nail with a short knife. Troublesome books, Sovereign? You curse under your breath whenever you read them. Tristan furled the scroll and pressed it back into its case. You can call it an unbalanced amount. Days later, they walked among the people again. Survivors from the Outlands, refugees who had fled the encroaching infernal menace, reached for the hem of his robes. They wept and begged for his aid. Tristan's escorts brushed another hand aside. There are more than usual. Many more, Tristan said, voice muffled by his mask. Infernos have reached the Erd Hills. Krios and Fiora defend the city, said Nadira. But not the people. The pair reached the steps of the temple where they had yet to perform another funeral rite. Tristan looked down at the congregation. Dirty, bloodied, desperate souls, all their eyes shining and turning to him for hope. No matter how deep he reached, he could find none to offer them. He was silent, thoughtful, and then he spoke. Be joyful, Tristan began with the familiar words. For those we see on the other side did not die. His voice faltered. The ceremony no longer sufficed. Tristan cleared his throat and started anew. Your family and friends did not die in vain. They gave themselves to show you. to show us that our salvation does not lie behind walls of stone or within old words. They sacrificed themselves so we may yet all live. The exemplars in the crowd stirred. I have heard news, as we all have, that those among the cities who seek refuge from out refugees, though their God is not of our own, they offer hope and mercy where there is none. They exalt all of us to join them. Tristan's voice increased until he was shouting at the throng. I have seen too many widows and orphans, he shouted. Too many abandoned souls. I beg you all, if there is hope, you must grasp it. If there is survival, you must chase it. Let not this moment escape you. Nadira grabbed him by the elbow. Do you want to die? Deidrian hissed in his ear. Already the exemplars working their way through the crowd towards them. Tristan turned to her, his mask too heavy. It always has been. No, he said. I want them to live. For weeks, Aurora had been on high alert as her mother sent attackers against her growing ranks. So engineers and priests could continue their desperate work, she patrolled the skies in a constant vigil. But now she was cold and exhausted from the days spent aloft. It was nearly twilight, and Aurora had ready to return to the temple when a ragged shape appeared on the horizon. It was like a winged serpent, flying erratically on half-broken wings. It descended sharply and crashed south of the temple among the trees. She instructed her clockwork angel cohorts to keep their distance, and she flew down to where the thing had fallen. Snapped branches clung to a body of rotting meat and tarnished metal. Its skull-like face jawed weakly in the air. The figure of a woman slumped on its back, clutching something to her chest. The woman stirred. Who are you? The woman looked up, her face corpse white. I seek Gil Lucant. Mortenbra said he might be here. The name cajoles stories of Aurora's youth. Dark fables Axis would tell her on the Convergence's earliest days. You won't find him here, she replied, keeping her thermomatic lance level at the woman's heart. Please. He needs help, the woman begged. Aurora looked at the strange mount. Whatever this thing is, you won't find it help here. No, the woman said, revealing her cargo. A bleach-white skull with an eye patch bolted over one socket. She also held a small piece of jewelry, like volcanic glass, framed into black iron. The way she held the object reminded Aurora of Nemo's own soul vessel. The woman said, I bring you Lich Lord Asphyxius, and I beg you to help me restore him. A dirty and callous throng shuffled through the western gate of Sewell. The dust of marches and the smoke of pyres stained their skins. Something so much deeper stained their spirit. Loss. So much of it stacked so high that it bent the backs of the strongest among them. Tristan walked at the heart of this flock. Many eyes looked upon him, glistening and expectant. Their eyes of the saved, looking for a savior. They approached the outer wall where the cadre of exemplars and flame guard waited. Astride her horse, Feora, in a wreath of fire and glory. Intercessor Krios lacked her orientation, but made up for it by his steely presence. Feora spoke before Krios could. Your companions look tired, Durant. Perhaps they should return to their homes and rest. We are leaving, Feora, he said, gently making his way to the fore. You know why. Stories from heretics' mouths? We expected better of you. Tristan gripped Veritas. The weight of people behind him was crushing. And we of you, mistress. Feora spurned her mount, summoning flames from its barding. A corona of flames sprung to life on its mantle and tail. The priestess and protector of the flame rode up to meet him. The might of the Scrutador's iron fist waited behind him. It was an impossible union forged by his own actions. You will not lead my people to death, she snarled. All life belongs to Minoff, came another voice, heavy as stone, echoing in the very walls of Sewell. High Priestess Dartin Vilmont emerged from the crowd at Tristan's side, his sword gleaming in his hands. Dozens of other paladins came forward, moving between the throng. Vilmon's eyes locked on Phaeorus. "You harm no one today, priestess." The Warcaster Durant moved to Tristan's. The Warcaster Durst moved to Tristan's other flank, a gaze hard as flint. Heavy warjacks pressed forward on all sides, creating a wall of iron. Phaeorus silently regarded the high paladin for a moment. Tristan could feel her assessing and calculating the two forces. In a low tone, she asked, "Is this what you want?" Darton Vilmon's face split with a smile. The sad truth of the world is this. No hero lives to see the end of their story. Some must vanish in the world beyond, not knowing if their actions added more goodness or misery to the final tally. Worse yet, others outlive their moment, that time when they had the chance to save the world. They must endure with the ghosts of everyone they could have saved, and didn't, calling them to their sleep. Ashlyn DeLise had long ago decided that her final moments in life would not be spent in fear. Yet as the nightmarish horrors with slobbering fangs filled mouths swarmed the corridors of the Queen's palace, she reminded herself forcefully of this decision. So much blood. Deep water blue from the infernal monsters, bright red from the Lali soldiers, all spilled for the most brutal of reasons. Not for land, not for patriotism, not for power, not for revenge. It was all spilt for bloodlust, an eagerness to kill. The invading infernals cracked men open as they seemed. They devoured men like meat on a stick until those men screamed themselves to death, watching limbs of old familiar scars from their childhood chewed to pulp. They were completely overwhelmed. Ashlyn knew it, and for all the time she had acknowledged death was inevitable for everyone, and she would face it with a specific mindset, she could not find it now. Speculation had become finally a fact. She was about to die. The Queen cried as Ashlyn barred the door to the throne room. It wouldn't hold back the tentacles and the claws and the mouths of the abysses lined with fangs, but it would give them another minute to pray for the least pain in giving up their lives for Lael. "You know, my queen," she said to Caitlin, "your tears are going to make my death worse." The Queen choked and nodded, trembling as she dried her eyes in the back of one hand. Ashlyn was surprised to see a slender dagger in her hand. "Is that for them?" she asked. "Or for us?" "For me," Caitlin admitted. She tried to smile. "I know it's a coward's way and beneath you, my blade, but I'm scared." Caitlin could not argue as a loud clamor of the approaching killers rose on the other side of the great doors. "They're here." Caitlin groaned, head back, eyes closed. "I had wished I'd gone to Henge hold." Ashlyn bit her tongue. Shaming her queen for such words in those last moments wouldn't ease the girl's terror. She could only offer different comfort. "I'll tell you when." "Thank you, Ashlyn," Caitlin whispered. Ashlyn could not recall having heard the Queen speak her name since taking the throne. "You're welcome, Caitlin," she answered. Something boomed against the doors. "Ready your blade," Ashlyn said. She lifted her Isaac and prepared for a battle stance to face whatever came through the door. Behind her, the Queen murmured a prayer. When Ashlyn glanced back, she saw Caitlin press the dagger of the edge of the dagger to her own throat. The doors rattled in their frames as something huge and heavy crashed into them. "Goodbye, my queen," Ashlyn said. Caitlin replied, "Goodbye, my blade." And then the feared savaged both of their souls as the doors burst open to admit their infernal murderers. As the ancestors promised, the wounded gods of Laios' offspring proved the perfect bait. A pale ocean of beasts roared over the borders of their kingdom. They trampled their forests flat, snapping the trees, stirred the land like the storm that split the world. Morgul waited, The supreme archdomina's desires were clear. Only the worthy may face the fangs of these beasts. Warriors waited in box, ancestral statues before them, and a wave of slaved beasts behind. As the waves of trembling trees grew denser, tyrants extolled their soldiers in glory, in exultation. Morgul waited. A snarling wave of flesh emerged from Ios's forest to hit the defenders with the sound of falling meteors. Venator's reavers whined. Catapults thudded. Streaks of starlight arched from the Iosan forces behind them to fall into the mob. Soulless Iosans emerged from the shadows. The void beast seemed blind to these assassins who plucked the mortal servants like ripe maskra fruit. Still, Morgul waited. His escorts honed his sword, Mercy, and tightened his boots. Thousands of warriors fell into the void creatures, their souls plucked and devoured. Titans waded through the carnage, scattering bodies to vanish among the trees. At the rear of the voidborn army, a slender figure emerged from the tree line. Swallowed in shadow, it watched dispassionately as the battle raged. Morgul shed his cloak. It was the Dominar's garment. Tonight, he was an assassin. He gripped his sword and bade his escort farewell with a silent nod. Drawing on a battle plan, he flashed forward in mystical shadows. The world grew distant as he leapt from one darkness to the next. A storm of vanishing souls boiling among them. The chosen would die. It was their privilege. But Makita was a scorn of her word. Their depths would preserve to the gate of Laios. The gate of mist would remain. Morgul's undertaking would ensure it. He stepped between the shadows until the figure of the infernal master loomed large. With the instincts sharpened from a lifetime of murder, Morgul sprang from the darkness. His sword streaked at the creature, driven by every ounce of his spirit. It intercepted him, palm slapping at his throat as if he knew the attack was coming. The void creature let Morgul dangle in its grip and whispered to him, old words in the old tongue. Remember, you will die. Morgul dropped his sword. He would not need it. The dying members of the warrior caste had opened the gates. As a pain giver, he walked through the door. The final fell peace to Zal and the extollers. He held a cracked sacral stone to the Infernal's face. The Dominar of the Pain Givers crushed the stone in his fists. It exploded like a vat of Vinohar, hurling his body back. The spirit within howled, an ancient Kovas from old Halak, mad and starving with the weight of generations. Morgul watched the creature as it learned the true horror of the void. Asphyxius learned that transcendence worked a transformation on those who underwent it. Nemo, for instance, claimed to feel the tides of time and space as they move around him. That his new form offered him understanding beyond that of his mortal life. Of course, that was Nemo's first time dying. Asphyxius had experienced such a change long ago. He didn't feel a transcendent uplifting of the prison of mortal flesh. His perspective had merely sharpened it. The fighting below him was beautiful in his own way. Two armies like silver serpents wound around each other, swallowing each other's tails. Fleshless bodies turned into broken bits that lay on the ground. The glitter of a blade action glinted in the shallow night. As the serpents wound together below, Asphyxius soared above the battle. His attendant angels cut a path of annihilation that flowed along, stopping momentarily to pierce a soul vessel left unwatched. To his pleasure, he could still harvest the spirit within. The battle bodes ill, he said to his companions. Ill for thee, he silently added. The clockwork armies would dash each other to bits, but Asphyxius would prevail no matter the outcome. The Acumen calls for aid, called the one named Hippolyta. So she did. The woman cut her way through the head of the serpent. Blood for her living flesh stood against her steel armor. She was relentless, pushing forward where her mother stood like a machine goddess at the Hengehold's heart. He considered leaving the arch Newman to her fate. Movement to the north, said one of the angels. To the east! Friend or foe, Asphyxius wondered. If it was the former, it would better be seen by Aurora's side. If it was the latter, he suspected wouldn't matter soon. Aurora climbed the steps leading to the heart of Hengehold, the gate her mother built filled with the air in the thin wail and warped like the lens of a lens. Stand down, mother! She shouted. Iron Mother was flanked by a throng of clockwork priests. Lucant was among them, as was Orion. An army of vectors held their weapons steady on Aurora. I have tolerated your childishness for too long, the Iron Mother said. You will not rob us of this moment. You will not rob us of a future, Aurora shouted back. Enough. Axis, deal with her, her mother said. He moved forward, hammers ready to strike her down. The clockwork priest turned back to the gate, preparing to call Cyrus. Its sound rose from a whine to a roar. Guard up. Watch your opponents, not his weapon, he rumbled, still treating her like his charge. Aurora readied her lance. Shut up, old man. Asphyxius and the angels descended like falling stars. First among the clockwork priests who fell like glass beneath the scythe, too focused on carrying out their mistress's orders to keep watch of the skies. Then to the warcasters. Flocks of angels swooped down around them, pulsing with energy scorching from blades. Asphyxius was much more selective. His annihilation servitors struck down the Iron Mother in quick succession, a moment before he plunged his spear through her body. A mortal wound against a mortal target, yet Iron Mother was anything but. She fought back, slashing at him with cloaks of blades. She flicked behind her before he could even land. He flicked behind her before she could land, and turning to unleash hellfire. The flames rendered Iron Mother's blades to slag, leaving her open to the thrust of her soul vessel. Aurora watched Asphyxius and was about to destroy Iron Mother. Stop! She cried. Axis turned his attention to the damaged Iron Mother. Look thee beyond the battlefield, Asphyxius said. Others draw near, we must be swift. Iron Mother cast her eyes on Aurora. Do it. We both know it is what you want. Before Aurora could respond, voices called out. The fighting slowed as both forces saw what approached. Machines guided forward, strange masses of convergence machinery bearing erratically built structures akin to those of steamships. Before them was a whirl of colors. Signarin blue and Cadoran red to the west, the yellow of Ord, the drab procession of citizens among them. Thousands moved to the gate, tired, dirty refugees drawn by their courage and a faint glimmer of hope. Aurora and the others went silent for a while, watching the masses congregate. There were more people than she could have ever imagined. There were fewer than she could have desired. Aurora turned to her wounded mother. In her voice, just above a whisper, she said, This, mother, this is what I want. In the bowels of forgotten Ios, two figures awaited their captive. The tools that they once had held a dragon's soul stone prisoner were ready. The unlikely pair, Lord Arbiter Heraxis, Herzeris, and Lord Gearshade, Lord Gearshield, both possessed unique experiences suited for the task at hand. The door of the chamber opened. The hooded Iosan spoke first. Morgul has succeeded. He's bringing the prisoner now. Gearshield remained emotionless. Heraxis could not say the same. Let us see what this creature can tell us about the soul. His Iosan companion turned his empty eyes to the Lord Arbiter. Remember our agreement. The gods come first. You may have what remains. Ashlyn expected fangs and tentacles. He was prepared to confront the most horrific nightmares possible, the kind that were even more terrifying than what she'd even imagined. She assumed the killers would be agony as to watch they bore down on her. It was worse. Beyond the door, to the room. Drenched in infernal blood stood armored men. Red armor. Men in Kadoran armor, led by a smiling maniac who had devastated Lael years ago with his brutal invasion. Beside him, a massive bald man covered in blue armor. "No," she hissed. "Not you. Never you." "I suppose that means you know me," said Supreme Commandant Gurvan Irisk, removing his headgear. He gestured for the bald man. "Have you met Major Brisbane of Signar?" "We," Brisbane grunted, "are familiar." Behind Ashlyn, the queen suddenly shouted out, "Forever, Lael!" Ashlyn whirled around to face Caitlin as she drew her dagger across her throat. "I did not give the word, my queen!" Red flashed on both sides of her. A bright line formed across the queen's throat, expanding rapidly, as the rush of soldiers crushed past Ashlyn and surged towards Caitlin as she fell. Ashlyn moved then, barring Iris with her Isak. "I know that blade," Iris said. She pointed at his heart. "You should. It was my father's. You were the one who killed him, so I intend to sheath it in your chest." Iris' infuriating smile did not fade. "Perhaps after we save your queen and your people." All that kept her from eviscerating the Kadoran was the presence of Brisbane, who watched stoically as Iris' soldiers tended to the queen's self-inflicted wound. Still, Ashlyn felt her lip curl in disgust. "When did you become part of the Kadoran Empire?" she asked. "There is no more Kador," Siege murmured. "No more Signar, no more Lael. They're just the Infernals, and then there's us. You either get on board with this if you want to ever see your people again." Ashlyn looked at her injured queen, who would not meet her eye. She moved to the window, her heart heavier than it had already been when she was expecting to die moments ago. The streets below were a mixture of old enemies killing new ones, Kadoran soldiers battling Infernals. Lightning flashed when Signarin troops confronted the horrors in their own way. It's all about survival now. That's all there is to it. Then this isn't the world I want to live in. Turning from the injured queen, Iris wiped the infernal blood from his unshaven jaw. "I would argue that it is no better or worse than the last one, Delise." Ashlyn challenged him with a glare, but Iris waved her off. "Your sullen look changes nothing. Not the way the world is now, nor the way we have to see it. We are all dying. We fall like raindrops by the hundreds of thousands." Siege said, "I heard that Kane is—" "I don't care!" Ashlyn closed her eyes. "And what does your mutant alliance propose we do now? Die as allies instead of enemies?" As one, Siege and Iris said, "Henge hold." In a blood-filled voice, the queen, her back set against her throne, gasped, "Henge hold." Ashlyn thought of the years that she had given to defend and liberate Lael. She thought of her father, whose life had been sacrificed to protect their land. She thought of those who had already fled, their patriotism beginning and ending with their own lives. "Henge hold," she said finally. Damn it. This is how the end begins. From the side sweep of the world, figures of destiny approach the field of reckoning, the field of oblivion. The fates of fortunes of all lie on their immortal shoulders, uncertain of what lies tomorrow, what tomorrow holds. These rare few feel the weight of fate on them. They stand at the gulf between hope and despair, the divide that splits the future from the past. They stand united. Now. The burly warcaster approached Hentold, gnawing on a foul cigar. His posture was casual. The presence of Nemo and Asphyxius in their new bodies seemed to faze him not at all. "King Julius sends us his regards," Drake McBain said. "But not his army," Aurora observed. McBain spat out his cigar, smoothing his mustache with a mailed hand. Nah, they're cleaning up in the streets of Caspia and Stillwater. I doubt they'd get this far west. Aurora looked at the Signarin refugees and the mercenaries escorting them. What have he brought? About 3 chapters of steelheads, a crazy sea-forged dwarf, and too many damn civilians, McBain said. If Julius didn't agree to my substantial fee, I wouldn't be here. Aurora looked north to another throng of refugees. What about them? McBain shrugged. Damiano, I suspect you can spot the shine of his armor from a league off. Some Crucible boys and girls, too. He gave Aurora a meaningful look. They weren't part of my contract. Neither are you. I'll keep that in mind. Good. We understand each other. The mercenary's flippant attitude bothered her. Why are you here? She asked. He shrugged. I'm being paid to be here. Rumor has it you're planning something. Maybe you'll get some people away from all this. He gestured as if to encompass the entire world. And if we can? Aurora asked. Those people down there are betting their lives on it, he said. Julius thought so too. Opened the coffers of Signar to see them protected. So, here I am. Aurora looked at the throng of desperate Signarans and their counterparts from both Cador and Ord. Dozens of families looking up to the sea at the gate in silent desperation. Move the people closer to the henge. Prepare a defensive line to the east. Be ready for anything. I always am, McBain said with a smile. Vlad awoke at the sound of a raven's croak. His sword was in his hand before the retinum cleared his eyes. He pointed the tip at the silhouette perched at the foot of his bed. Oh, do not be afraid, my little prince. Its voice creaked. Moonlight through the window rimmed an ancient face, glinted it with by iron talons. Why are you here? He asked. The old witch of Cador adjusted out of the window. Time. We can slow its march, but we cannot stop it. I have held the clock's hands as long as I am able. He had never heard her voice like this. She sounded tired. You need something, he said. Yes, I go south. With me go all the bad dreams. You go to Umbre tonight. As she spoke, the old witch's words rang in the cool air. There was an irresistible gravity to them. Vlad couldn't resist her, but he needed to know more. Why? Your blood knows why, she said. It burns with the blood of kings. It pulses to the drum of hooves. It quickens at the scent of battle. The horses in the stables of Stiskraki Palace began to whine. What do I need to do? Vlad asked. The old witch rose gently, raising a talon to his jaw. Oh, my little prince, what you were born to do. Lead the horse lords to their deaths. The Oath Keeper appeared in the heart of the gathering. This was an auspicious meeting, attended by the omnipotence of the Circle of Boros and representatives from each of the 3 dominions. They stood, silent sentinels, watching and waiting. Wormwood speaks thus, Cassius began. The creatures have offered us a compact to assure our order's survival in the days ahead. If we stand aside and allow them to claim their due, they agree to leave untouched all among us who do not oppose them. The conclave of the Circle's greatest powers murmured at his words. Further glances across the throngs of alliances forged in haste and just as quickly abandoned. The blind desert walker called for silence. Oh, what do we have of this offer? Moshar asked. The Weaver of Shadows has given us an agreement most binding, Cassius said, and it's sealed with rituals of indestructible nature. The druids began to clatter, debating the proposal, loud voices arguing for the pact. Others proposed how to rebuild following this claiming. Their opinions gained traction among the mob. A stern voice cut through the clatter. Idiots! A slender figure stepped forward, a hood hiding his face. When a Gorax tastes a bit of meat, do you think you can debate it stopping at its feast? Or make accord with a ravenous troll, perhaps? The conclave went quiet as the man moved closer to the center of the circle. What know you of such things? Kruger the Storm Wraith pulled back his hood. About dealing with hungry beasts far more than any of you. Cassius felt wormwood writhe in Kruger's presence. A mix of anger and anticipation surged through him. The beast of all shapes hungers, Kruger said. All seek to devour. These things would strip Cain of its life and leave nothing behind. With nothing else to consume, how long do you think we would survive? I say we act now. Moshar shot back. What do you propose? Kruger gestured beyond the conclave to the east, beyond the trees and hills surrounding them. There are more hungry things in this world than the worm or the infernals. I propose we invite them to the feast. No dawn rose. A swallowing darkness took its place as the infernal masters devoured the light of the sun. From the shadow came the wailing of a thousand souls. The infernals had arrived. Alan Runewood was once someone noble. An archduke, a lord among lords, a patriot, a commander leading gallant soldiers into battle. Now he was a Lord of Ash, leading the most evil fiends ever seen in Western Imran to annihilate his former allies. He sat atop his mount, his face guard lowered, staring down a hill at the refugees streaming into the crowd gathered at the coast. They came to Hengehold to find salvation of sorts, but Runewood knew otherwise. They were gathering to expedite their own slaughter. Valen Harrock rode next to him, the fallen knight's horse as twisted and unnatural as its rider. At times, Runewood thought that Harrock was a statue. He watched children butchered at a caravan, impassive-faced. Runewood hated his companion, his chaperone, but he also envied Harrock's emptiness. Stop. Surprised, Runewood looked between them. The lumbering, slithering, crawling, leaping, limping horrors that they were amassed, but they waited obediently. He looked back at Haluk. What do you... Haluk said, Stop. You. Stop pitying them. Now. An enshrouded figure approached on foot, seeming to limp and float at the same time. These wretched ones were scattered across their forces. Runewood wondered if this one had known him in another time. It avoided him every time they were near one another. It judged him. It hissed something secretly to Haluk, something which seemed to translate conversely to Runewood. The Weaver of Shadows comes soon. She brings forces to bear down their gate. He said, We are ordered to claim the ones who come to use it. Runewood instinctively scanned the expanse below for this so-called gate, but his attention was quickly diverted, captured by a military force approaching. Hammers rose to the sky. Dwarves, Runewood said, scanning them. I believe Durgan Madhammer's at their head. Kill the head, Harrock said. Just kill the beast. On my command, Runewood began, but Harrock was already gone, charging down the hill, bellowing. Cultists and monsters streamed around Runewood as both sides, as he knew just as he was just a rock in a river. By the time he joined the charge, the first dwarves were already dead. Whew. Yep, we've gotten to the final push. There's no more victory to be had. Even with all of them joining forces like this, there is no victory. Only survival. As Siege Brisbane said, there's no more Kador, no more Signar, no more Protectorate, no more Ord, no more Lael, nothing. It was just the Infernals and the living. And so we begin the final stand at Hengehold. Need some honey first. All right. A horde of predatory creatures from beyond the boundaries of existence really does put things into perspective.
Ah, I love you so much,
Madhammer said as the charging mob of infernals drew closer. As the cultists and beasts came within range, the Ruick Warcaster stroked the ring of his finger one last time and hurled a now primed explosive with all of his strength. It detonated among the mob with a throaty roar, sending flesh and soil in wet chunks.
Oh, come at me, you fatherless sons!
Madhammer roared. He flipped the visor down on his armor and fired his cannon, Buster, sending another wave of explosives into the enemy ranks as he invoked a spell to detonate in the rear guard. Fathers, but he loved his job. Masked cultists and blade-armed beasts hit the front line of dwarves. Creatures spurn all over the front line to fall in line behind those. A discord of carbines and clashing steel filled the air. "Get low!" Madhammer bellowed. The dwarves, who heard him, hit the dirt. The Grunblack blasters he controlled all surged up and hit their hailshot cannons. Sprays of cast iron shot mowed down the front ranks of the infernals, and the runefolk too slow to follow orders. The blasters' barrage opened up enough space for Madhammer to risk another charge.
I love you so much,
he whispered to the explosive before sending it on its way. Time was not a beast that could be broken into a saddle. Once it had been a river that buoyed her along from the moment of her birth to the moment of her death, like a rotting leaf in the rapids. It has since lost its stubborn linearity, but time remained stubborn. It felt like trying to fold a spider's web. One moment she was a girl on the beach playing with her sister, another moment she was a soldier on the front lines, and another she was an old woman, frail and feeble in a cold room. All jumbled up all at once, unless she focused her attention. For her sins in breaking its yoke, it punished her with a mix of now, then, and yet to be, with a measure of almost was to keep her on her toes. Victoria Haley fought to keep her focus in the present moment, the present foe. A throng of hulking shapes, grotesquely human with arms like scythes. She could see the scraps of time and memory behind their forms, fragments of spirit mirroring her fragment itself. She cut through them, watching the infinite series of possible attacks falter, watching herself die a countless number of times, tracing a thread of actions that led to her victory. Haley plunged her spear into the last howling infernal skull when time stopped. For a moment, the tapestry of potential futures rippled in her mind's eye. Dozens of golden threads extended for her, each one splitting and splitting again and again, representing possible paths forward, and yet all seemed drawn towards a single point in space and time alike. West, towards the Meridius, far from the current battle. Something there crushed down on all of her possible futures. Stubborn old time pulled her at her once again, insistent on her course. She twisted her spear, free of the infernal corpse. "Thorn, to me!" Her warjack toppled over near and let out an inquisitive whistle of steam. "I'm not sure," she said. It felt surreal to be uncertain about what the future held. "But we need to go there, now." Victoria Haley looked at the darkened sky to the west. "I'm afraid we don't have much time," she said. The mercenaries on the western flank struggled against the swarming infernals' attack. Already the field was hazy with smoke and fires of rifles and warjacks and artillery. Aurora activated the enormous gate. Along its surface, G-mantic accumulators glowed to life with an aura of blue light. Flashes of arcane energy coursed the gate, sinking inward like a whirlpool. Air roared in the vortex, whipping dust along its current. A sound came from the other side of the gate. A gentle voice like silver chimes beckoned and allured. The Iron Mother struggled to her feet, her machine eyes looking at the vortex like with something akin to reverence. "Call her, daughter." Before Aurora could respond, the vortex swelled, pulsed. A flash of light erupted from its heart. When the light touched, the world wreathed and challenged. Fine filigrees of metal claws like vines over the surface of the henge. Patches of grass on the hillside took the gleaming color of steel, bristling like tiny knives. The sight of the gate's energy transfiguring a nearby living priest enticed Aurora. She screamed, the noise shifting into the sounds of poorly meshed gears grinding. Without her power field, she may have suffered a similar transformation. "Nemo!" she shouted over the wind. "We can't just send innocent people through that!" He floated down, studying the gate with his mechanical eye. "I agree. The goddess's energy is potent. I will reconnoiter." "I should go!" she cried. "I'm still human! We'll know if the field can protect us on the other side!" Asphyxius cut off for the debate. "Our allies fall in great number," the former lich said. "Thy bickering should be moot should they draw any nearer." "Stay out of this!" Aurora shouted back. "Cyrus's warning may be clearer on the other side," Nemo said. A gentle voice spoke from behind Aurora, where a moment ago no one stood. It was a woman's voice, tinted with a soft accent. Not a warning, old friend," she said. "An invitation." Aurora turned to face Major Victoria Haley. The Signarin looked up at Nemo's new body with soft, sad eyes. When did you... Haley spoke. "She's inviting you to join her, Sebastian." "I accept." He floated through the vortex before Aurora could say another word. Were it not for the likelihood of staggering defeat and brutal senseless death, Drake McBain would have said this was the best damn day of his life. Steelheads drove bloody wedges in the infernal fodder to his left. His nomads barreled over cultists to his right. The battlefield was a chaotic playground of thousands of death, of the big and small, and McBain thought it could only be better if he were paid more. His cigar tasted like bitter leaves. His blade, Undertaker, sang like a dirge. His goggles were so covered in blood that he could no longer see out of them. He realigned them into his headgear. Overall, he felt like a victor even in the midst of their downfall. He was no longer sure where the gate was they'd come to protect. He could no longer see better via his warjacks than he could through his goggles. But he was sure as hell feel its presence. It was a cool wind on a hot summer day that became a savage winter deep freeze. He slashed and body parts flew. The cultists were the most fun. He could tell where the traitorous bastards were hurt by their wails and entrails. It was hard to tell where the fanged, ripping horrors that looked like nightmarish insects suffered. He just had to guess. The steelheads he brought were hacking a path to join the Seaforge forces, the Seaforge forces dealing a fine blow to the cultists who had come charging down a nearby hill. Of course, that balance was likely to shift soon. McBain was pretty sure he had seen their heroic warcaster take an ugly hit. "Be seeing you, Mad Hammer," he grunted with his teeth full of cigar. "Probably sooner than expected." He heard the wind howl as if in agreement, and then he realized it wasn't wind. It was the collective gasp of all the mercs and allies around. He turned. "Uh-huh," he heard himself mutter. Didn't even sound like him. "That ain't so." He stared at a towering thing of an ill-proportioned woman's body and a head of a grotesque horseshoe. Hell, it might have been a hat. It didn't matter. The thing terrified him to his bowels. He had no idea where it come from or why there were such atrocities like lobster-like claws and slanted fangs like meat-eating fish around it. They were just there, from wherever your nightmares whenever you woke up, he supposed. He cleared his throat. I ain't sleeping, you bitch," he called out. His voice was strong in a tone his men would say brooked on no dissension. Just the same, the bone-white woman, Zatharoth, who he would learn her name before the end, descended by turning towards them. They moved like kites in storms, unpredictable, erratic, yet terrifyingly focused in hunger. There were so many they blocked the horizon and the skies above. The shrieks of the dying around him were distant and meaningless. It was their last stand, after all. His very soul quivered and threatened to flee, as if there was anywhere for it to go. "Stay in here till this is finished, you kicking shit," he said, as if the horrors closed in, and he raised Undertaker. Nemo emerged into the void, both marvelous and terrifying. He hung in a midnight realm, crushing in its emptiness. Still, since his early adulthood, he looked up in the night sky and wondered about the distant stars. Now he drifted in their domain. There were no words he knew to describe the silent expanse. Before him lay not a goddess or a world, but a whirl of shining light. They formed a frozen swirl of sparkling luminescence, a dense cloud of blinding brilliance. Cyrus was not among the heavens, nor a body that the veiled dome of night. She was more. She was so much more. The aura of Cyrus washed over him, cradling him in her insubstantial arms. In her touch, he understood that the machine blight to emerge from the gate was merely a miscalculation of her power, recalibrated now for the delicate beings she invited to save. Nemo's unliving eye drank in the radiant stars and the delicate filgrate of nebulae, dark places that devoured light, blacker than the black of the void. He imagined words among this milky river of stars, hanging like motes of dust in a sunbeam. Cyrus spoke to him then, not with words, but through a perfect language, mathematical and musical in rapturous counterpoint. Nemo's soul despaired. His soul sang. It's as if his living eyes, if he had still living eyes, he would weep. "Come," the goddess begged. "Be with me. Be among me. Make me your home." Roget Devaros felt young again. He knew he had Infernal Master Zagharoth, the Weaver of Shadows, to thank for this feeling of exaltation. But she did nothing to earn it, he thought. This is all mine. As soon as she brought him to the final battlefield, Roget led his cult members away from her, driving them into the refugees and those who thought to protect them. Steelheads fell before him, and Roget drank their decimation like a vampire. One of his cultists shouted to him that Orin Midwinter was conquering the field as well. Roget bristled at the moment. There wasn't enough harvest to feed them all, and he would like to have considered Midwinter's fall before this was over. Steelheads grunted and died. Ruick soldiers gasped their final prayers to the Stone Fathers. Trollkin and human blood spilled by the gallons. He even caught a glimpse of a Crucible Guard theater commander, if the insignia spoke truthfully, as the man was torn to pieces. It was, Roget decided, a good day to be alive. He drove his dagger into the face of a mercenary woman, pleased at how she flailed with both hands to pull it out, but she fell away from him, taking his weapon with her. As he bent to unsheath it from her skull, he had one moment of surprise and pleasure. It stank of death and tasted like a corpse, but Roget Devaros stood tall again and clenched the blood-soaked cigar that he had discovered in the mud between his teeth, and he thought, "This is all mine." They had been given souls and chose to spend them like this? With squandered potential drowning among petty ambitions and a desire to satisfy imperfect masters? Zagharoth would have pitied them if it were worth the effort. Their spirits shed living prisons and danced like embers caught in the updraft of a bonfire. The tyrant of the unhallowed did not let them go to waste as the mortals had done. She snagged these wayward spirits, dividing them and molding them into new shapes. Then she directed them into the fray, one wave after another, wearing down their opponents. Their souls were tarnished and feeble things, but Zagharoth was a master sculptor. She could transform a single one into several lesser beings, and from the joined scraps coaxed to other, more powerful entities came into existence. To her south, the souls ground deeper into the enemy's defenses. She advanced on the north. drawn by the light of a few remarkable souls gathered among them. She could taste doubt and fear, and points where she could apply pressure to bend them to her will. Part of her infinite intelligence drifted through the motions of the battle, guiding her horrors and whispers of her lieutenants' minds. The rest were devoted to picking out those that were vulnerable to her manipulations. Across the battlefield, she bargained terms with dozens at once, making deals and counter deals faster than human thought. Fewer agreed than she might have hoped, but they would suffice. At least he wouldn't die old and aching on some bed. The thought gave Captain Amandor Damiano a small comfort as he cried for an order among his crumbling steelhead lines. "Ask for glory, and fate shall provide an opportunity to seize it!" he called out, though no one seemed to be listening. Halberders and riflemen started giving ground. Their once stately regiments turned to disgusting routs. Damiano thrust his sword into the foul thing that had appeared to the east, graceful, alien, and abhorrent. "By my side, brothers and sisters!" He pressed on, guiding glory through muscle and sinew. Though attacks weakened their power field, battering his gleaming armor, he drove forward through the enemies. At his back, Rocinante threshed through the horde. He grew closer to the infernal master. As one, he and Rocinante lifted their arms, Damiano holding a pistol, the warjack aiming his cannon. They shot with a heartbeat apart. As the smoke cleared, they saw he had failed. The master stood tall, gesturing him with a dismissive flick of the wrist. Many horrible things converged around him and loyal Rocinante. "I should have brought a horse," he said. "The best stories always have heroes meeting his end from the saddle." The horrors descended upon Damiano. It was neither glorious nor quick. The gold-clad fool dispatched with Zarathoth finalized her pact. Across the field, a few dozen who saw the futility of fighting against her turned on their allies. It was not their strength of arm she desired, though. It was the mark upon their souls. Amodamios would soon arrive. He would desire more hordes to command. A murder of crows heralded their approach. The war horse of Umbre approached from the eastern horizon to cackling laughters of birds. The old witch had shortened their way. Great Prince Vladimir Sepeshish rode at the head of the battle line, his faithful companion Drago by his side. Before them, the land slooped below in a tangled field of bodies and mires of bloody soil. The Inferno swarmed the defenders in clouds of angry hornets. Vlad wheeled to face his cavalry, good men and women of Umbre all. Cador Red and Protectorate White mingled together. Though the heraldry were of different nations adorning them, they were as one. "Once the world trembled at the horse lord's approach," Vlad called to them. "In the steppe and valley, all knew to fear our fury." He pointed to the raging battle with his spear. "This foe is not of our world. It is not known the might of Carpathian steel, of Umbre resolve. Let us teach them what all know in the Iron Kingdoms know." The sod whined in the paw the air. "Let our hoofbeats be the drums of war. Let their dying screams be our battle cry." The warriors of old Umbre raised their weapons, bellowing back with answer. "Today is a black day," he shouted. "A day we will make run red. With your blood and mine, we will emerge victorious or die in glory." Vlad wheeled back towards the infernal masses. He croched his horse lord's spear and led the charge. "Wait!" Orin Midway's staff impacted the man's skull, cutting short his plea. His hands throbbed, his fingers numb from the sharp jolt. The fighting around him was less a battle than it was a bloody brawl. Bodies crashed together, went down in charred soil. It was a gorging, spitting, bleeding, dying mob. His robes were drenched in sweat and blood, hanging heavy and sticking to his flesh. Orin howled to be heard above the fighting, calling the many congregations he directed, "Let the wounded fall! Press on!" The cultists who had heard them clambered off their broken bodies and struggled to their feet, rendered like drunks on the slick ground and of their own injuries. They drew steadily closer to HENGE, but as the numbers of their foes dwindled, as they tightened the noose around them, those that remained fought back with greater fervor. Irate, Midwinter hurled baleful flames at someone. Friend or enemy, it was impossible to tell. The souls he snatched were invigorating, but not enough to dull his many aches. A steelhead bullet ground against a rib cage where it had struck where once had been his flesh. His fingers throbbed from gripping his staff. Midwinter's scowl deepened. The battle was in their favor, but uncertainty gnawed at him. It was almost a relief when the thunder of hooves sounded from the rear. His dreadful suspicion was confirmed as hundreds of heavy horses bearing armored riders bore down on them. To the cultists near him, Orwin gave the order. "Fall back to the masters! Regroup! Regroup!" For God's sake, I think they're on our side, Marshal Gearhart mumbled. He flapped his hand at the general direction where he expected Mr. Clogg to be, letting his aide put a fresh weapon in it. "Sir?" Clogg sniffled. If he asked for anything, it would have been drowned by the report of the warcasters firing. "The riders to the east. Do you think I was talking about the bloody infernals?" Gearhart said, to line up a shot at the tall figure commanding the army. Gearhart fired. It was a kill shot. The awful bugger didn't die. "Damn it, Clogg! Give me a bigger gun!" Clogg responded with another dirling snuff. That was the big gun, sir." Gearhart scowled at the weapon in his hands. So it was. "Right," Gearhart said. Get some bombs from our nearest best rocket men. The ones that dropped a conquest back in Lael. Captain Evie something? It was Victus, sir." He turned to his reporter. "I don't give a damn if it was 2 trolls in an overcoat. Hurry up and do it before things get worse." Clogg moved to fulfill his request as the northern sky dimmed. A creeping blackness had rolled in, a dark fog of ink. Another immense master advanced to HENGE, accompanied by a small mob of cultists. "Things have gotten worse," he mumbled, and then hastily added, "Sir." Sheer momentum carried the Umbrians forward over the bodies of the wounded, hooves slipping on gore and churned earth. Riders beneath the weight of the dying horrors or were stalled by the shoals of the dead enemies that amassed before them. The great plinths and the sod were swift and skilled, weaving through the press of bodies and across the broken ground. The two moved as one, the horses stamping down on creatures as the prince skewered with his spear. Drago struggled to keep up, charging forward over the surge of like the surges of a derailed train. The venerable warjack shattered bodies like chaff in the frenzy to stay at Vlad's side, hacking a corridor through the enemies with its axes. He followed through the bodies, riding the river of carnage to his destination. Past feeble traitors to humanity and nightmarish figures of waxy flesh, a sprint of muscle and bone stood tall. She orchestrated the infernals and wove death with foul magic. Vlad spurred Vlad on, a spear guided towards her heart. Hurling over the first line of cultists and thundering through the second, the great prince of Umbre plunged his spear into the infernal spine. Ichor sprayed from the rupture of the wound on its side, sizzling the ground where it touched. She shrieked in wretched pain as smoke boiled out of her wound. The infernal twisted to face Vlad, snapping off the half of his spear, turning her featureless face upon them, backhanding him with her thralling fingers. Her flesh withered under the age of countless years of touched. The infernal spoke, her buzzing voice bending to the speech of Umbre. "You missed your mark, mortal." Her wound already sealing. "It will cost you your soul." Vlad slid from his saddle, sending Vasily away as he drew his sword. "My soul is already spoken for," he said. As the dark champion of Umbrae slashed the Infernal Master, an old and furious warjack screamed in a steam of noise and grinding gears. Drago had joined the fight. Aurora could no longer wait for Nemo's return. As far as she was concerned, passing through the gate was as foolish as stepping off a dark ledge without the promise of a short drop. A promise from someone you barely trusted. Or as it turned out, he even knew. "He's gone," she said to no one in particular, though she knew Major Haley was listening. A crush of refugees, some arriving on tiniest hovered ships as they sailed through the maelstrom, had closed in around them. "He's not coming back." "There remains a future on the other side," Haley breathed close to her now. "The time is now." "You're worse than the hermit," Aurora said. Haley was not deterred. "Trust. Have faith." "In what? In you? In him? In them?" The pleading around them reached a crescendo. Hands that never touched a sword begged her. "I suppose," she whispered, "it's better to die with a slim hope than none." Haley nodded as if to scripture. "Don't argue," Aurora said. "It makes me feel worse." She directed the nearest vessel, manned by a wide-eyed young man with desperate old eyes, towards the gate, assuring him over and over as he reached behind him for his even younger wife's hand. Their craft vanished, and when neither screamed, the others surged to join them. The vessel steered near and glided gracefully through the gate, the protective fields around them shimmering as if hesitant. Aurora had little else to say. They fled the killing fields for the unknown like souls beckoning into a light. No one even asked if they would live. It was just as well they didn't. Aurora didn't like to lie. Haley probably wouldn't. They flee, they escape, they live. No words. But the message spread amongst the Infernals and their masters, including inducing a frenzy fit of wave. Horror shrieked as souls slipped through the gate beyond their reach, and the souls still near paid dearly for those departed. They crushed, splattered, and shredded those they could, but still others crawled through the gate. The Infernals howled and roared, gnashing teeth and snapping claws. The sheer terror held some back, but still too few. Even those that with nothing left to live for were trying to do so. Then the air rippled with heat, and fires incinerated the tall grass that had been crushed by the first refugees, and then bloodstained by the next ones. Bodies too close to when he pressed were shredded as a dark shape descended on the north. He had come for the end. Those who knelt before the towering form cowered and died. Those who stood their ground died. Omadios, called by some the Black Gate, by others the bringer of sorrow. Only death at the gate this time. With a baleful eye, he took the entirety of the battlefield, and yet another eye met his across the dead and the dying. It did not bloody itself blind to avoid a stare. It held fast, and Amodios heard its master whisper from afar. "Come for me," Asphyxius hissed. The pulse of their engines clawed the skies as they crossed the mountains of east of Ramrak. She could feel the hum of arcane energy scream through the deck plates. "Message from the Kelpiercer, ma'am," the signal officer said. "What does the old Cyclops want now?" Commander Kardakov asked. She almost regretted the system of signal flares. Short message, ma'am. Didn't you used to be fast? Stop." Sorcia's dour expression hardened. "Stoke the fires. Tell Vigorous Hammer to meet him at the Henge hold." Vlad rolled away from the bilious steam of one of the infernal beasts spewed at him. He pressed his attack, opening wounds in the master's flesh like black-ribbed mouths. Drago's axes flashed and hewed at one of her free arms. The master's expression had turned from arrogance to anger to desperation as they battled. She clearly expected his strength to fail. So did he. The eastern flank floundered under the weight of the cavalry charge and was congregating at the foot of the Henge. The gate within flashed as refugees escaped the Infernal's grasp. The master bellowed. Vlad's skull split from the noise. Like an avalanche, it rolled over him, driving him to his knees. But it drove her down as well. Not the master. The roar came from two vessels, largest watchtowers, lightning wreathing one, the other built like a gun-studded anvil. "Drop off our passenger," Sorsha ordered. Below, the mechanism of the bomb bay doors opened. Karchev the Terrible fell to earth, a blacksmith hammer landing upon a stubborn bit of iron. Old, familiar smells of blood, coal, and blasting powder filled his nostrils. Karchev rose from the crater of his impact to look down at the field of the struggling soldiers. Their eyes rose to meet his, trailing up the armor of his colossal frame.
"It is good to be killing again,"
Karchev said, and laid into his foe with his oversized axe. "Get us closer to the gate," Magnus said. The airframe's pilot obeyed, causing the vessel to drift over the battle below. "If you have a clear vector, tell the Stormsmiths to hit them with everything they've got." The bridge crew called affirmative. Looking down from the window, Magnus saw throngs of refugees around the gate. There were dozens of vessels crowded around it, far too few for those gathered. "Bring us in fast and low to the gate," he ordered. "Sir, that would bring us directly over the enemy," a young pilot said. "Good. Get the storm chambers hot and fry anything that's uglier than me down there." It was an unexpected relief, but a welcome one. On a tide of lightning, the Signarin ship flew at the gate, disgorging Trollkin and trenchers to aid in the defense. A hobbling, scarred Magnus emerged and shouted to the refugees, ordering them to get aboard. It could not contain them all, but Tristan Durant saw Nadira and dozens of Midnight Faithful aboard the ship. He smiled, knowing they would be safe. The arrival of the ships only served to aggregate the infernal swarm swarming the Henge like a disease. They climbed atop one another, straining to reach the Signarin ship's hull as it descended towards the gate. Once the first horror found its grip, the rest easily followed. They breached the hull and climbed to the gunwales, rendering the steel and penetrating the ship's inner workings. Lamenters scattered amongst the decks, piercing victims with their savage forelegs and flinging them into the air. Acid from below and spells singing through the streakers from above devastated the craft and its people. The ship tipped as the horrors clawed its way into the engines, the consummation of souls replaced by wholesale slaughter. Beneath the decimation, one soldier ran as if to join the carnage, his armor bloodied by those he'd once called fellow countrymen. Their bodies fell all around him in pieces of the ship as it positioned itself below it, welcoming its descent. When the ship came down in a fiery explosion, Omonadimos returned the sliver of his attention he had focused on the gate itself and the foe who waited there. Souls could be lost from the ship, but not from the gate. Zatharov battled a mortal opponent, but spared part of her mind to communicate. "Runewood is escaping us," she conveyed to him. A second explosion from a destroyed Signarin ship punctuated her declaration, as if Runewood mocked her beneath its crushing finality. "The gate," Osmodeus conveyed and moved towards Aphixius again. It would cost her personally more than she could ever have imagined, but to Haley, the cost was more not to try. She watched the Signarin ship Cloud Piercer plummet from the sky, its surface moving with infernals like maggots on a corpse. And yet the threads were still there, as they always were. She learned to eschew certain phrases like that had been a part of her vernacular once, but one came to her just now. There is still time. There is always time, she amended. Pulling the thread tightly might snap it, but she could twist it enough to go back and right the Cloud Piercer and slow its descent, adjusting it to prevent it from toppling sideways down the hinge hold to the hinge's heel if it didn't stop in time. It remained under assault, but it could still move, and it did, skimming the Earth's surface as if redirected itself towards the gate once more. She closed her eyes. which only strengthened the light that she could see, and she reached out to the echoes that she knew were there. She knew their names, just not their faces. It was easily to welcome Amador Damiano. He was so recently struck down, he even recognized this field of battle. More difficult was Hierarch Severus and his predecessor Voil, whose faces were hidden behind masks. Still, they came. The most difficult among them was the last of the hundreds whose echo she found. This was the face she knew intimately. The black facial hair, the eye patch, the sneer. An echo of time, Ventor Ralthorn joined the others that had made the Iron Kingdoms what they were, if he had expected to assume this role all along. Under less dire circumstances, Haley could have allowed her resentment to boil over. Instead, she welcomed him to the battlefield. He seemed to scan the combatants as if looking for Ashif Magnus to deliver payback for Ventor's death, but he joined the myriad of other echoes that she had sought and found for the final battle. As she turned to lead this newfound force against the Infernals around the gate, she secretly hoped that the former king's soul would be one of the noble sacrifices about to come. From the south, a new force came, one she was mildly surprised to see. The enormous Gator Men at its head, flanked by two pale-skinned nice witches well known to her, was a strange sight, as were the green and gold armored troops and the surreal stone constructs around them. All forces became equal in death, she thought. And then, if we all live, it will be a historic day. Maybe even the end of wars instead of days. More death would follow this final thought. Beneath the Signaran ship, one soldier ran toward it, his armor bloodied by those he had once called fellow countrymen. He could sense his escape from the torment at the hands that he positioned himself below it, welcoming his descent. He closed his eyes to welcome his end. His lip curled in defiance and his mind filled with hatred for his infernal masters. The mistakes he had made were about to be rectified, he knew. I win, Runewood thought, hoping they were listening. The air of turbulence shook him and threatened to knock him off his feet. He opened his eyes and stared straight up at the underside of the ship as it passed over him. It steadied itself, its bow aimed at the glowing gate. He watched his salvation sail away. Son of a... He wept out loud, and then felt Zagorov call to him. Head held high, his emotions contained, he had no choice but to obey. Is that the royal consort? Commander Harkovich asked. The entire bridge crew aboard the Vygov's hammer went quiet. Sorsha snatched a spyglass and looked where he was pointing. He has beaten one of the masters. Gunnery crew, put a full spread around him. Make sure nothing reaches him, Harkovich barked. They relayed his orders, though through brassing brass horns into the depths of the vessel. The humbled master crawled away, holding his lacerated hand in defense. Vlad stalked forward as the ripple of Kadoran guns ripped and turned the world into fire around them. Stay your hand, she hissed, and I can offer you anything you desire. Power, fortune. He could feel her gaze on him like a filthy grime of oil. Like a film of grimy oil. She probed his heart, his spirit. Love. Vlad raised his sword. You offer water to a drowning man. Zagorov smiled, an ugly gash revealing a toothsome smile and gesturing skyward. He is here. You know, watching us. Watching the father of her child. The great prince's step faltered. You need better lies, he said. The master chuckled. So the old one never told you. Took and hid the child away. Plundered the vault of your memories. I can help you reclaim it. Uncertainty. He felt it gnaw at him, opening a chink in the master's black tendrils explored to widen the fracture. She summoned images of him, of the child and its mother. The battle faded from his eyes, replaced utterly by the vision. Vlad barely noticed as Zadorov wrapped a wreathing hand around his throat. Sorsha's heart turned to ice as the great prince fell. She could summon no words. Cold radiated from her until the crew breathed smoke, until frost hung in the air from the tips of their hairs. When she spoke, her voice was that of an ice goddess. It carried the unstoppable weight of a glacier.
Destroy that thing.
A murder of crows whirled above Zaroth. Their thousands of voices calling to her, mocking crows. More came, impossibly more, to blacken the skies. As they dove at her, a tornado of wings. They hit and spread across the field, battering the horrors and cultists in the path. In their place, a motley army of nightmares stood, a cackling old woman riding atop a rattling machine at their heart. Zaroth prepared to meet this new foe, siphoning souls to close her wounds. When a new dawn broke in the north, a legion of winged warriors descended upon the Black Gate, led by a radiant woman with a blinding soul, a silent sorrow of a man next to her, a silent shadow of a man next to her. Accompanied with them were chanting hordes of faithful mortals, singing praises to their creator god. Zaroth felt something unfamiliar. She felt afraid. Poor child, Zavanna said, looking down at where her flock had gathered over Vlad's body. You know this day would come. Be happy. Your bloodline still flows. And with that, she cast her eyes upon the gate and a refugee vessel slipping through it. Somewhere amid its passengers, a young stowaway, unknown to all, traveled beyond the Inferno's reach. Amodamos felt a ripple shift. These were the expected tactics. His greater interest was the one who fled across the battlefield, the one who would die a second time.
Let him escape,
he breathed to the former Lich Lord, the distance between them closely swift. Asphyxius turned suddenly and set to his stance. He shot a glance at the gate and then back to the Infernal Master, called the Black Gate. Thou misunderstand. 'Tis not I who would escape.
Yet you flee,
Amodamos said, swatting troublesome mortals out of his way. The Black Gate allowed their dying souls to fuel him. He spun his flails at speeds that cracked the air. Shouts could be heard. Asphyxius called, I merely wait for my reinforcement. Amadeus made to attack the Lich when the shadows turned against him, holding him fast. The Witch de Negra revealed herself and joined Asphyxius, and together they charged. Aurora caught herself laughing at how ridiculously thought had crossed her mind. I am now the child of two machines. Beneath the shifting glow of the gate, she lashed out of the tree of hideous flying hoarders with tentacles that easily died. What were their choices my future? She felt her gaze pulled to the gate, the escape, the promise, the future. It was far, far too late to consider any other action. Axis, the harmonic enforcer, shifted his blows from one hammer to the next, from action to reaction, but the substantial amount of gore that covered both of them could not distract him from his belief that an enormous moment of portent was upon them. Action, reaction, cause, effect. The goddess had brought him here, in this moment, to see her will invoked on Cain. He would not falter, he would not fail, unless she deem it necessary. Axis spotted the gore-filled ladder of the cultist Midwinter. He began carving a bloody path to the man through the bodies. Sunder felt lighter than Karchev ever recalled it feeling. The massive axe felt more like a kitchen cleaver in his grasp, as it inevitably did when his addiction to battle took him over. He spun, infernal pulp spraying around him as a human rider approached. He bore befouled emblems, marking him as an illuminated one. Karchev didn't know him personally, but he could still kill him impersonally. Karchev storked his boiler and trampled forward, pulverizing combatants in his path. Bullets rang off his hull as he waded through the storm. You stand in the way of destiny, rider cried. Karchev raised his axe on high.
You stand on broken ground.
He brought the weapon down with all of his strength, striking the earth hard enough to split it like a rotten log. Horse and rider tumbled into the breach. She moved between the splattered bloods of both infernals and those resisting them, and none stained her white attire. The blood soaked the ground, but it left the harbinger immaculate. She felt the blessing of men off around her, and she brought her faith to this place where gods were changing the world. The warm radiance of her Archon companions like that of the sun on her cheeks. Like morning dawn, banishing the cold and the dark, they blazed their way through the tangle of bodies. She proceeded through the gate, with mixed intentions but the conviction of a god-defying irreverence. Marshal General Baldwin Gearhart would have preferred attacking the Condorans around him than the rabid monstrosities tearing their world apart. But today, they had torn apart more than that. He knelt in the blood of his manservant Cog and stifled a gasp. "See here, Cog," he said hoarsely. "If you defy me in this dying business, I fear I'll have to fire you." The old man's eyes flickered, reaching up to Gearhart's hand. "Perhaps I must tender my resignation, sir." "Foolish Cedric," Gearhart whispered. Barnabas ripped like a scythe-like appendage for the nearest horror, using it to pierce its lopsided owner, and then flicked his tongue across the limb's edge. "Tastes like pig," he bellowed, the gate forgotten. Everything he could want was right here. Seirin turned back to the gator's shout. The Lord of Blood and his most devout congregants needed little encouragement to rip their enemies apart. The few spawn she and Rhinus could control required additional goading. Yet the infernal enemy seemed to favor the Gator men, as if detesting something about the spawn. How interesting. She could not justify why she liked this insight, but she did. Ashlyn couldn't help but scan the refugees for Marie and Vane as they made their way towards the gate. She didn't really expect to see them. She was charged with protecting the Queen. They were charged with protecting the people. The odds favored her. "We're almost there, my Queen," she whispered to Caitlin. The pulsing lights ahead beckoned them to the new world beyond this life. "I am only Caitlin." The Queen wept. "You will still be a queen on the other side," Ashlyn promised. She told herself she believed this. The corpses of horrors were stacked and slung like fish draped on a giant net. The soil was slick with their blue blood. Some of their bodies pulsed like fading life still. Their stench carried to the furthest combatants and avoided all they could. One stack moved. His body was ruined, his skin flayed everywhere that was exposed, his hands raised with the twisted and broken fingers to explore his face. One cheek was peeled to the raw muscle, but he passed his fingertips over the hole indifferently. He pressed them against his tattered lips. "Damn it," Drake McBain growled. "Where the hell is my cigar?" Omodius's grip on his tendrils tightened. The abhorrent silver-clad thing assailing him and its witch companion were pesky flies that had bit and lingered and left lingering stings. He prepared to summon up fresh horrors from one of the souls Zalaroth had marked. Let it pull this battle to an end. Yet the Black Gate discovered it could not. Something was girding the scattered souls of the battlefield from him. He could not rive their essence from them. With one flail, he forced his opponent back and looked at the source. A young woman, her soul as delectable as a fine meal, accompanied by a winged host. This was the source of the frustration. To craft one from that soul would be a pleasure. Omodius turned away from the irritating foe to pursue his new quarry. Mortal servants and horrors flooded to fill the gap of the passage. The Black Gate had not traveled far when a loud voice called out, "We are not done with you." Karchev the Terrible heaved, blood coating every inch of him, dripping from the axe in sheets. The Infernal Master moved to intercept the man, drawn by his own essence of strength. He would enjoy this appetizer before the feast. The first ships appeared to Nemo as shooting stars, emerging from the gate to their proactive fields, glowing brilliant bright blue across the void. Each emerged with a corona of chromatic mist that trailed them like tails. More came through, each fitting past him. There in the eye of a storm, lines of color and light describing infinite arcs to Cyrus. Wishing the distant travelers safe passage, Nemo flexed his mechanical strength to return to Cain. There was much to be done. He returned to the scene of chaos. The ring of the henge hole pressed tight with refugees. Merely yards beyond, the huddled mob, infernals, and people of Immorin struggled in a desperate battle. It was close enough for the blood to splatter onto his hull. "I hope you're on our side," a familiar voice grumbled. Nemo turned to face a grim soldier, Magnus. He wore a Signarin uniform, its clean lines a strange pair for his weathered face. "You look different, Asheth." Magnus fired his scattergun into the wall of horrors. "Moros dangling." "Nemo? So how do you do to you? So the hell do you?" There's time for you to escape if you go now," Nemo said. The Warcaster gave him a sardonic grin. "I spent my whole life fighting for Signar," Magnus said. "I'm not about to leave it before the curtain call." Haley was fading. Her reinforcements had spread the Infernal's attention, but they were still closing. Already weak from calling forth so many echoes, she drew what little strength remained. Her body shuddered, barely able to remain. Time was stubborn, true, but it was she. She wrapped her fists in the weave of it, wrenching pieces apart. Around her, refugee vessels shuddered, doubled. Like pieces of a broken mirror, they reflected across each other. She flicked between the present moment and other infinite possibilities. She saw her actions had consequences. Reflections of Cain, manifold reflections, showed many futures. She was not in any of them. "Keep them back," she said to the other Warcasters, her voice carrying over the battlefield. Axis, Aurora, Asphyxius, each fought on. Three A names, she thought, as she felt herself sinking into the very flow of time itself. How odd. Refugees stamped across the colorless ships that she summoned. Keeping these reflections in the present moment was like holding up a warjack. Her body and spirit flagged with the effort. She earned the wrath of time. She drew the attention of the masters. Though it must cost them dearly, the two masters allowed themselves to be struck down. Hordes of horrors collapsed. Cultist souls burned up. They manifested again, closer this time. At the cost of so many souls, they died and reappeared again. Closer still, the infernal masters were coming for her. Haley put her faith in her companions. She faded deep into the pull of time. The skies rumbled as if threatened. Even the infernalists were taking the battlefield pause from their killing to look up in surprise. A lance of light shot from the gathered clouds like a bolt of lightning, like a falling sword. Soldiers, cultists, and horrors shielded their eyes from the glare. Among them, only a few knew what the Archons were before they arrived. They were like giants on wings of silver and royal purple, in armor glowing in their creed. The Thamarites in battle below were not surprised to see their angelic saviors alongside those of their goddess's brother, but the Morrowins were caught their breath in disbelief. Some cheered, some prayed, some expected instant salvation, while others recognized the renewed strength they could feel in their limbs because hope had finally arrived. Some, however, couldn't believe their eyes. Irusk had felt he had arrived late to a buffet. He seen many of the best kills had already been taken, and those that remained were far too afield or otherwise engaged for him to chase down. Then, once Ashlyn and her queen bolted to the gate and Brisbane had pursued his own targets, Irusk needed to decide how to proceed. Ultimately, he settled for quantity over quality. Now he pulled one leg free, then the next, and from the pile of dead cultists that rose as high as his hips, he watched the Archons fall from the skies, his lips curled black as he recognized one from the front.
Why?
He sneered in disgust.
Are we never really rid of you?
Ashif Magnus was so close to the gate that he wasn't sure at first what he was seeing. Then he broke out into a grin as he opened fire from the nearest cod horrors.
Welcome home, old boy,
he grunted as the Archons joined the battle. Infernals quickly fell upon the Archons that wore the face of Coleman's striker. They died as quickly as before. Commander Harkovich, she said in a measured voice, you have control of Vigor's hammer. Inform the mechanics to stoke the beast's boiler. Bring me down to the fighting before you all freeze to death. Commandant Sorsha had left the command bridge. Her tread left a cold trail so deep that the thick hull plating crackled. The commander watched her go, dread growing, feeling a great doom had been unleashed upon the world. It had been hard to row to hoe. It had been a hard row to hoe. The road to Caspia to Hengehold, her sword gave her more than enough power to deal with the horrors that she encountered along the way. Given that she had felled a gate with it, but she still found it difficult. Perhaps she no longer wanted to go. Perhaps the futility of it all was finally setting upon her. Perhaps her mother's incessant questioning about her motive was exhausting. Or perhaps she was just weary of the witch fire. She was also surprised to find she missed Harlan Versh, and even more surprised to find that she regretted that she didn't leave him to his fate in Caspia. She wished she hadn't, but it couldn't be undone now. Besides, it would make it worth her while. Laraxia, the voice of her mother, whispered into the sword from the sword. Do you intend to destroy the infernal masters and their brethren, or the gate everyone is used to escaping? Be silent, Alexia answered. She took to the sprawling bloodbath of chaos before her. She was still thinking of a proper answer as she moved to join the battle. Either way, she said to her mother, you're about to receive guests. She ignored her mother's response as she reached into the first of the combatants. This was not what she was promised. Zarathoth struggled to keep her feet as she looked at the sea of violence. Walls of corpses were impromptu cover for pockets of mortal gunfire. Blood and sweat sprayed in the air. The defenders appeared at every edge of the battlefield surrounding the Henge, a motley band of different cultures and ancestries blended in battle. Demigods, a few, attempted to stall her, and Armadios approached to the Time Witch. The old one to whom she offered clemency commanded her machine steed to kick one of Zarathoth's own horrors like a cannonball. The old witch, she was laughing at her. Enough, Zarathoth conveyed to another master. Armadios was locked in battle with a trio of winged avatars, but spared his mind to respond.
Are you certain?
She let the memory of a high priest drive the punching dagger through her body. She shed the form like a snake shedding its skin, appearing behind the apparition a few lengths closer to her target. I tire of their heroics, she communicated. Zarathoth announced a greater portion of her mind had snuck away from the mortal realm, feeling Armadios to do the same. Both continued to battle on pure instinct, letting their intellects touch a far darker place. Why are you here? The magnate Tridatorium was not used to being bothered. Their gaze was like the myriad blades peeling back every layer of her being. They did not wait for her to answer the query, preferring to extract the information on their own way, a painful way. You are weakened. You come seeking our aid. Zadaroth didn't answer. The leaders of her infernal order would draw their own conclusions. She is failing, the Primus thought. She has failed, thought the Secundus. She desires our intervention, the Tetrus thought, sickly amusing by the prospect. The magnate convened for a moment. In the space of that moment, Zarathoth knew they would consider and discard infinite punishments and debts for her, each one tailored to humiliate and debilitate her utterly. She and Armadios waited their fate. We have decided, they declared as one. We will assist you, but require a benefaction in return. This gate, it intrigues us. It could make our traverse between worlds simple. See to it, see that we acquire it, they thought, burning the deed into her mind with an unbreakable contract. In return, they invested her with a measure of reserves of souls kept for just such a need. With it, they gave the reins to their chosen protector, the great leveler, the consumer of all things, the guardian of the well of souls. I won't disappoint you, she vowed. But you already have, they responded before banishing her from their presence. Her focus returned to the battlefield. She was reinvigorated and more furious than ever. He heaved with the weight of both his crippled horse in the fall. In the fall, both its forelegs snapped like old broomsticks. Val Hollock looked upon the fissure, corpses hanging over the rim, blood dripping onto his face. He grunted, picking his way through the earthen walls. As he did, a low sound emanated from the shadows beneath him, drawing the shrill cries of his mount. Hark looked back and saw a liquid blackness slowly filling the pit. It moved like a living thing, extending thin tendrils that sought out the horse and entangled it, and dragging it back to the waiting dark. The creature stopped, shrieking at least. His body was giving out by the time he reached the top of the crevasse that he'd been spilled into by the Cadoran warcaster. He marveled that the man was nowhere near. Next time, make sure to finish what you start, he thought, as he scanned the field. The machine man was roaring, threshing his way where Omadiah stood. Hark could hardly make out his bellowing cry.
You do not escape so easily.
In the distance, he recognized Orin Midwinter, braced for battle. And while he did not recognize the metallic thing that stomped its way past him towards Midwinter, he did recognize it as a follower of Cyrus. Its hammers did it no good when it did not know that Valhalla Vernus was behind it. As he stabbed it in the back, he thrusted his sword to the other side, and he managed the metallic thing's soul hanging from its tips. Midwinter raised his staff in salute. Idiot, Hark thought. He advanced to the Cadoran warcaster. While halfway across the continent, infernals and refugees congregated to the henge hold, Lord Arbiter Heresus took a moment to appreciate his surroundings. More scorn kept their emotions on a short leash, but Heresus found his current companions had mastered the skill far better. For all the passion they displayed, the soulless Iosans may have well as been ancestral guardians. The Lord Gearshield was another matter entirely. They are birthing beds, the flat voice said next to him. Heresus was studied the high furniture built in a row along the wall.
You were a midwife?
He asked, struggling to find the word. Something like that. Your shear is improving. The Lord Arbiter changed the subject. The thought of this elf overseeing burps unsettled even him.
How fares the Vord Master?
Patiently. Follow me. They traveled the vows of the building. It felt like a funeral, with tunnels as vast as a mausoleum. Along the way, Heresus noted what could be holding pens, like those for captured slaves. He noted fingernail scratches on the walls outside the door with keen interest. Their journey ended to the largest underground vault, which Gearshield described as his former workshop. It made him think of as a pain giver and extoller sharing the space. He could not help but taste the pain and fear soaked into the stones. A circle of soulless Iosans stood guard in this chamber, surrounding an elaborate cage of 12 interlocking faces. Too short for the master to stand, too narrow for it to sprawl. The thing had chosen to wait for them with legs folded beneath it. Update us, Gearshield instructed. The one called Nail spoke. It has been asking for you, Nail said. Agathon passed the time by renewing their contracts. They had drawn upon a number of them to summon a force to these lands, but many still remained. They prioritized individuals to seek out what they once they were free. They had made no gains about the current watchdogs. The creatures were empty vessels of no worth to them. It was difficult to even see them without intense focus. The lack of a soul made them fade into the background, duller than an insect crawling across a wall. The But these two, there was something else. Agathon studied the form and history of their unusual souls. Writ across them were many deeds, far darker than those of which the master had become accustomed. One pulsed from within, an essence that stained the limits of its container. The other had calcified spirits clinging to it. Flies stuck in honey, worn like jewelry on a queen's throat. Agathon spared a portion of themselves to communicate, devoting the rest of their mind to probing the arcane prison. Pain does not work on us, they said, looking for a reaction. We do not intend to use it, Girshir replied. I can offer you your offer. You will offer me silence, the elf cut off Agathon's statement. The master watched intently as this elf collected an object and gave it to one of the soulless. Begin at the lowest setting, Girshir said, and increase it gradually until I say otherwise. The one called Nail approached the cage. What is this supposed to do? Asked the bejeweled one. Test for vulnerabilities to arcanic force, Girshir said. And if it doesn't work, then Lord Arbiter, we shall begin to do things your way. Girshir moved to the bench and prepared a writing instrument. You may begin. Empress Anya Vanar sat on a throne in her court, unescorted, unattended, vulnerable. In her hands in her lap, her head bowed, she seemed lost in thought. Or so thought the only blood-covered assassin who made it this far. When Scarab Palace was quiet, as if it was in the middle of the night, Anya Vanar imagined that she could hear the battles against the invading Infernals in the distant south where so many had fled. Now the Condoran borders were closed, she imagined it less so often. The latest Grey Lord report from HENGE was incomplete and distracting. She could no longer tell where her people were, though she knew Vlad would keep them in line. Desertion would remain unheard of in the Condoran army. Execution would be the ongoing response. She was weary, yet her mind would not let her rest. One thought, both gleeful and so far-fetching as it seemed ridiculous, nagged at her like hunger. When this invasion quelled, Western Immerwin would be just one kingdom. Khador, with I as its empress at its head. Yet before this could be accomplished, there were still challenges within her borders that needed to be dealt with. She just needed a name, and then the purge could begin. She looked up to see the shape erupted from the shadows, quietly. She thought, now I will... They came in a small force. Just 12 of the Pale Guard, with former Kovnik Kes among them. He was an older man than the others, hair grayed by experience, so when he finally breached the palace under cover of night, he let them have the fun of killing the guards. They took no casualties. Great Princess Regna Gravov would be pleased. Kes, however, felt no pleasure in killing. Killing his own countrymen was unavoidable, ensuring the White Queen's rulership once the Infernals had taken their bounty of souls and left the land to recover. But he vowed that he would not result in civil war. He could control the outcome by being one of those who personally assassinated the Empress, while her champion Zepesich was far too from home to save her and divide the nation. She was alone. But Kes was wrong. They had been given details about what to expect once within the palace walls, guard rotations, heavily traveled corridors, routinely locked doors, but no one warned them about what they will ultimately encounter en route to the princess. He shouldn't even have been alive. The terrifying, nightmarish rumors were a far cry from the flesh and bone reality that fell upon them in the dimly lit hallway. The rumors were tame by comparison. The Butcher had been unleashed upon them. Kes had admired the legend from afar, but in person he felt little more than sheer terror. 2 of his men were dead before Kes could even knew they were under attack. The Butcher's face was a mangled mess. A red rabbit frothed from his lips, and he snarled like a wild animal. As the Butcher raised his axe, Kes caught sight of half a head, severed at the mouth, hurled away. Next to him, a decapitated assassin took 2 steps, hands raised to where his tongue now wriggled from the top of his head. Someone screamed. Kes thought it might have been himself. The Butcher whipped his axe around in a smooth semicircle, and Kes could see an arc of blood as in the air, as if it was solid surface. 2 more troops fell, their corpses flopping over one another as if being stacked. The others responded, but none as fast as Kess. The Kovnik knew they would all die in this battle, one at a time, and the only way to reach the Empress was to let the living father give the butcher pause. This is what Kess told himself as he escaped the slaughter. He was covered in the blood of his countrymen. As the sound of the battle faded, he reoriented himself, recognized how close he was, and let the death ahead of him overshadow the depths behind him. When he slipped into the room's shadow, the Empress was alone. One stroke of the blade, and it would all be over.
Treason becomes patriotism,
he hissed to himself. He made no other sound as he leapt from the shadows and fell upon the Empress, his sword raised, a murder weapon to a historic treasure. She thought, now I will. From the shadows whispered treason. She knew what was about to happen. Raising a pistol concealed in her lap, she shot the assassin in the face at point-blank range. She enjoyed the look of surprise as his features exploded in death. By the time Orsus had arrived, fresh from killing the assassin's compatriots, she'd already resumed her composure. It's that upstart who calls herself queen, she said to the butcher, indicating the white ribbon on the dead assassin's belt. Her little cultists are here. When the butcher stared at her as if he were still in battle, she softly said, Great Prince Regna Gravenov, I want you to find all of her people who might be lurking in the palace. She looked down at the dead assassin. I want you to send a clear message to her. He thought of dying, Kovnik to Infernal, and his soul fled the palace. He had a debt to repay. And I think that's where we're gonna stop, because my throat is about to give out. I think that's the longest I've gone in reading some Warmachine lore. But what did you all think? It was, I told you, the claiming is an apocalyptic event. We seen so many characters die, so many characters are fleeing. It doesn't look like there's going to be anything left. There's barely anything going to be left of this, and it's just incredible to read. And we still got more to do, but like I said, my voice is about to be shot, so I'm going to give it a rest anymore, and I might start cracking and all this. But price you paid for giving some people some good, delicious lore. So I want to thank everybody who came out and watched on the on live. If you're watching on the VOD, make sure you do comment below. Let me know what you think. Any improvements to be read or done. I might do a short tomorrow. One last Star Trek shitpost before I call it a year. And hopefully you guys will have a good one, as tomorrow is all Christmas Eve. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. You already know how to support the channel. So until next time, it's been Shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat.